City Council meeting on April 3rd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. Minister Urchansky, call the roll.
Ball. Jensen.
Present.
Baroni.
Present.
Scott.
Present.
And Zierden.
Present. All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do I have a motion for the approval or amendment of the agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the open forum. If there's anyone that would like to speak not related to the disc golf course, you can please come forward now, state your name and address.
My name is Diane Williams, 32744 Northwoods Lane, and I would like to commend the city for having the building codes. I had a total loss fire a couple years ago, just got back in my house, finished up last fall, and it was very reassuring to know that there was somebody standing there looking out for my welfare and for quality housing stock in the city. And I'm really appreciative that we have those rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Lisa Bear, and my address is 29726 Lakeshore Drive in Breezy Point. I'm here this evening regarding the Breezy Point Butterfly Release event, which is held annually in July. There's no question that organizers and participants have very good intentions when it comes to this event and believe they're doing a good thing. However, many groups, such as the North American Butterfly Association and the National Wildlife Federation, consider the captive breeding, shipping, and public release of butterflies to be considered cruel and inhumane. In fact, the monarch butterflies have officially been listed as an endangered species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature and are now on the brink of extinction. I'd like to take a few minutes to just explain why this butterfly release event is detrimental to the monarch population in the hopes that organizers will opt for a more sustainable, eco-friendly event in the future. Promise 4 minutes. Monarchs that are, Imagine tens of thousands of disoriented monarchs unable to find their way to their overwintering grounds. Because most monarchs released in the northern one-third of the U.S. come from California or other warm weather climates, for instance, where they do not migrate to Mexico, their offspring may not be able to orient properly. Monarchs that are raised inside and under unnatural conditions may not have had their delicate migratory physiology develop, which means that as the time comes for our local population to begin to migrate south, those bred elsewhere may perish. The truth is that butterfly breeders mass produce the animals and will ship them to anybody with a credit card. They are often flattened and sealed in envelopes or tiny boxes and then shipped over long distances. Many are crushed or die from exposure before they even reach their destination. And even if they do arrive alive, they often eventually die because they are released at the wrong time of year or at the wrong locality to survive. The ones who do survive the trip might not be considered the lucky ones. When captive bred butterflies are turned loose and left to fend for themselves in an unfamiliar area, they struggle to find food sources and often can't survive the new climate. Sadly, captive bred butterflies aren't the only ones who suffer. Mass production of monarchs makes it easy for disease to spread. When commercial bred monarchs are released, they can carry diseases to the local native monarch populations, which have already declined by an estimated 90% over the past 20 years. Butterfly releases are so detrimental to the population that the NABA has referred to them as a particularly long-lasting form of environmental pollution. I would love to see the city of Breezy Point become a leader when it comes to creating and maintaining butterfly and pollinator habitat by planting gardens of native grasses, flowers, and vegetables. This will go a long way in teaching our children the importance of habitat conservation instead of treating butterflies as if they were toys or living balloons. In closing, and in celebration of Earth Day, which is Saturday, April 22nd, I'd like to give each member of City Council a packet of milkweed to plant outside in the spring. In fact, I have packs for anyone if anybody wants one. Milkweed plants are the only source of food for monarchs, for the monarch caterpillars. But these plants are rapidly disappearing due to the loss of habitat stemming from land development and the widespread spraying of weed killer in the fields in which they live. So at this time, if I may step forward, and that's all. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bear.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's more information on the
Thank you.
as well on the National Butterfly Association. More information.
Right. Anyone else? All right. We will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to Personnel and Finance Committee report. Administrator Chansky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the first item we have under the personal finance, an RFP for health insurance broker services. So this is something we haven't done in quite a while. We have no really complaints with our current health insurance broker, but again, we haven't done this in a while. And it's always good to go out occasionally, especially for most professional services, and put it back out there for the market and to see what else we can get from just the services from a health insurance broker, and then also ultimately from health insurance plans. So what this RFP does, and it is attached to the packet, just requests brokers to submit a response to it, pretty much showing the city their services and what they can provide. Once a broker is selected, then that person would be responsible for going out, soliciting and preparing health insurance option benefit plans for the city, for city staff to review for 2024. Part of this RFP, we are recommending it be a 3-year contract, so 24, 25, and 26 benefit years. By doing it now, kind of an ideal timing to do it now. We send it out, let's get it out tomorrow. We should have responses back, have a recommendation back to you in May, so we can select someone, then they can go out and do their work, so we can have health insurance plan information back in time for preparation of the preliminary budget in August and adoption in September. Any questions that the council has in this time on this item?
None for me.
None for me.
All right. Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the RFP to be submitted.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any further discussion on this? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Administrator Chansky?
Second item is the 2023 tort liability waiver. This is something that the council has to do every single year. The city is insured through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust. From a city's perspective, this is the best insurance we're going to get. And every single year, part of the renewal is the council has to decide whether or not to waive its tort liability limits. The state of Minnesota established these limits for cities. They currently sit at a single claimant of $500,000 of the total liability, with multiple claimants for a single occurrence at $1.5 million. So if you have a tort level liability claim, no individual can sue the city for more than $500,000, and no group can sue the city for more than $1.5 million. we have a total coverage of 2 million, so we have a little extra just in case. If the city chooses to waive these limits, anyone can sue the city for any amount they want. And then we as a city have to decide how much coverage we want and go seek that additional insurance coverage on our own. The city has never waived this limit. Even in talking to our insurance agents through Weisinger Engel Insurance, they're kind of our middleman. We work with them, they work with the league. I asked them, why would anyone waive these limits? And they said, I have no idea. It doesn't really, anyone looking to waive it will be looking to try to just save a penny here at the risk of losing many pennies later. So we as staff are not recommending we waive the limit in 2023. Ultimately, when it comes to liability, when it comes to any liability, the city, again, we are insured through the League of Minnesota Insurance Trust. So when it comes to any liabilities we might have in a park, or someone twists their ankle on a sidewalk that is, doesn't meet ADA, is protruding, or anything like that, we are covered through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust on that.
And I know there's been residents that have had questions about liability, especially when it comes to the disc golf course. So anyone that does have further questions about that, Administrator Chansky can answer those. So this is
But
definitely
all in
part of
all,
it.
I will say, pretty much every single city in the state goes through this insurance. Again, you're not going to find anything better at the price. And again, I have zero concerns, and even talking to our agents at Weisinger Engel, that we have any liability gaps.
Right.
But at this point, Madam Mayor, unless there's any questions from the council, we as staff just recommend not waiving the statutory tort limit, liability limits for 2023.
I'll make a motion for the city to not waive the statutory tort liability limits for 2023.
All right, any discussion?
No.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. New business, Administrator Chansky.
Yes, I believe there should be some representatives from the Breezy Point Airport. Cliff, if you want to come up, I believe they have just their annual request regarding using the city's folding tables and chairs for Aviation Day.
My coworker, Lindsay, should be here. She's going to be taking over some of the duties. Our Good Weather Day is supposed to be May 6th this year, we hope.
Yes, we
And it's from 10 until 2 that day. We've invited quite a lot of military this year. Again, they don't always get a chance to fill the slot. If they have pilots that need time, they do that. But if we can get our tables and chairs, and to ask if we could close this street again, like we did last year. We've got over 100 classic cars coming, so we'd like to park them diagonally on the right-hand lane going north. So we also have something new this year. We have the MIA POW balloon, and that'll be here from Arkansas, and we're going to tether it on the airport roadside. Got to stay away from the power lines. So that'll be a new experience. Other than that, I think we're sure welcome for North Memorial. Of course, they're our major sponsor. We love having them here. State Highway Patrol has a drone. I think the city now went to the county. So we'll try and get some aerial photographs. And we've got medevac choppers will be here, and ambulance and fire truck and so forth, all our emergency vehicles. So if anybody has anything they want, also we have the Army and the Air Force coming to set up our Air Force. So anybody who wants to sign up, they will be there. They're all looking for new members, of course. Other than that, I think that pretty much, I hope it's a nice weather day.
Yes, we do too. All
And we appreciate everything the city does for us.
right, thank you.
Thanks.
No questions. I'll make a motion to allow the airport for the use of the city's folding tables and chairs during the Aviation Day event on May 6th.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? Yep.
Madam Mayor, do we also want to include the closure of the north side of Airport Road as well in that motion?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd amend for that as well, to close out Airport Road for that day.
Okay, any other discussion?
I would just like to add, for anybody that has not attended, it's a great event. It's a lot of fun. We've been going to it for years. And, you know, if you haven't attend, it's worth it.
And it's free to the public.
Correct. And you get a free hot dog. There you go.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to the topic of this evening. Well, first, I do want to say thank you for everyone for coming out tonight. At the start of the year, the reason the time limit was removed was because I really wanted people to be heard. And it didn't matter what side you felt of a certain issue. I think people really wanted that in the city, and that's why, you know, we did that. And for 3 meetings, we have allowed for people to come up and pretty much talk as long as they felt like it was necessary. And we wanted to listen, and we did. And I think through all the investigation that we have done in the last 3 months, there's a couple of things that I know that I have learned. We understand at this point that the process and how we got here today, it can be improved. And we are working towards that as a city to do that. We're working with staff, we're working with each other, because we want those processes to improve. We don't want to be sitting here again a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road having the same issues. We want to improve communication with everyone. We want to make it visible, whatever we're doing within the city, and we want people to participate in local government. I think it's really, really important. We also understand that there are a lot of residents and non-residents that love the disc golf course. There's a lot of people that play. There's a lot of people that take their kids there. They come up to visit the area. They do spend money in the businesses. But even with all of that said, there are residents who are directly impacted the most who live on that course. And those needs have been heard. And we've had many conversations with them. And tonight, we really want to give this some closure, not to discuss traffic, potential issues with smoking pot in a parking lot. We want to discuss the course and the issues brought forth by residents as it pertains to today. But we want them to also bring us some solutions, because there are 3 that I see that are evident. There's the complete closure of the disc golf course, the expansion. Leave it as it is, don't do anything. And then I think the more popular one, as I've heard from who I've talked to, is there could potentially be some modifications or solutions on how to solve some of the issues specific to resident properties. And I think if we focus on that tonight, I think that we are going to be able to move forward better. Because if we focus on everything, we just don't really accomplish a whole lot in how we look at, you know, what do we do moving forward. So I would like to first give the opportunity for the residents who live on the course, who feel that they are directly impacted by what has happened every day, and I would like for them to come forward, and I would like for them to let us know what they think the solution is, a potential secondary solution. I know it's individual to some of the people and some of the houses that are there. So I think that I would like to start there. So I would like to ask residents to please come up who live on the course and please let us know some of your issues and what you think the solution is.
Madam Mayor, before we do that, can I make a request? I think as a council, we have to get very clear and understand procedurally how this issue is actually in front of the council. I appreciate Councilmember Maroney's chronology going back several years as to, from his experience, what's led this expansion of the disc golf course to be in front of the council. But I've also heard from residents as to whether the council's even taken a vote as such to look into and further the expansion of the disc golf course. And I'm not sure that an answer was ever really provided as to what council meeting was it that a vote took place to commit city funds to the expansion of the disc golf course. That's a procedural question I have. And I have a few more that I think I would like to address with the council.
Can we do that when we have our discussion? Can we
I
allow
would
for-
rather do it right now because I think potentially what I wanted to share could have a bearing as to whether or not, frankly, it makes sense for people to even get up and weigh in on this.
Mr. Chansky, can you please weigh in on what you have found as to procedurally? I know that the city followed statute, so it wasn't that they didn't follow statute. There was just things that could have been done better. Can you please explain a little bit more
Yeah, I
about
can just
how
do
that
two
happened?
things on that. First, I just wanted to bring attention, some documents that actually just brought attention to myself from former Councilmember Diane Williams, a member of our Parks and Recreation Committee. Again, she has a lot of wealth and was here 10 years, 11 years ago when the city adopted and worked through the City of Breezy Point Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan dated November 17, 2011. In that document, it was also one of the proposed improvements was to construct a disc golf course. And then I think some of these other documents from 2014, Councilmember Maroney included in his, or brought before the council as well. As to the actual procedure question of how did this actually get approved? I'll approach it this way. I'll answer two questions. First question is, did the council take a specific vote? Was there an item on the agenda that said disc golf course, approve or deny? No, there wasn't. How this project got approved is that it was a project included in the 2022 budget that was considered by the city council on December 6, 2021. At that time, per statute, a public hearing was held, the budget was worked through, and when the council approved that budget, that was a project within the budget. They approved the project in that manner. That is not an improper manner to approve projects. That's how, honestly, in the many cities I've worked for, that's not an uncommon practice. You know, they don't always have every single item that's in a budget gets its own consideration. It's throughout the budget process, the budget is worked through, and once items in the budget are approved, that's essentially staff's marching orders. Do these things. And that is where the council chose to formally approve the disc golf course was as an element in the budget, in the 2022 budget that was approved on December 6, 2021.
Well, I would agree that that's not necessarily uncommon. I would also agree that it's not extremely transparent either. And part of the reason why I ran for council, and I believe I was voted, is to be a voice of transparency. To me, the fact that this never came in front of the council, recognizing the amount of money that this was going to involve for a vote up or down, to me renders this really a situation that even shouldn't be in front of the council. I mean, from a process standpoint, I don't know how it can be. Beyond that, having gone back through some of the information that Councilmember Maroney provided, as well as just looking at things myself, I don't see where there was any point in time in which this golf course was on any planning and zoning commission agenda. I don't know, Councilmember Maroney, even correct me if that's not accurate.
I would not be able to comment on plans when I don't think it was. was going to get yelled at. Deb was going to yell at me. I don't believe it was on planning and zoning. I believe it was the recommendation from the Parks and Rec Committee. The land was parkland for the city. So I don't believe it ever went to planning and zoning. I can't commit 100%, but I don't believe it has.
Well, that would be consistent with what I didn't find, which was any interaction, was any review, any conversation whatsoever at planning and zoning. And to me, that's very concerning and certainly relevant to most any land development that goes on in this city. We require it of a private developer. Why do we not require it of ourselves? To have disc golf, and in this case, the expansion of it, have an application submitted in front of P&Z, go through the process like we would require anyone else to do, in terms of where does this disc golf course fall within the overall land use in the city. I think that that is a significant procedural error. And frankly, I don't think it's an error that we can, as a council, just sort of cast to the side and say, oh, well, we'll do better next time. That is the city council effectively not following its own zoning codes, land use plan, and ordinances. I don't feel comfortable at all with this continuing to be an item on the agenda in front of this council until we take many steps back and actually, instead of just saying we need to do better by process, we actually follow it up with action. Now, interestingly, as I looked into land uses and zoning districts, I was quite surprised to find that actually, if you look at the land use categories chart in the city zoning ordinance, it shows all the different potential uses of land in the city. And then it's a Gantt chart, so it shows all the zoning districts in the city and whether or not these uses are permitted outright, are permitted under a conditional use permit, require an interim use permit, or just not allowed. And when I went to the use of public recreation, non-motorized, and I go to the zoning district in which the expansion is proposed to be located, R1, this is not allowed. It's got NA, not applicable. So all the more reason to me why I had this followed process, had this gone through planning and zoning review. And I don't know why it didn't. We're not exempt as a city from adhering to our own ordinances. Among other things, it would have been discovered, you know what, this is in fact not a use that's even allowed in the R1 zoning district.
Mr. Scott, I understand it's within R1, but is that property zoned R1 or is it zoned public?
The resident property in question is zoned R1. The property is public and it's completely surrounded by property zoned R1.
So you're stating that within the property that's zoned as public, it should be treated as R1 because it's surrounded by R1, just to clarify?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's completely within the R1 zoning.
How is this related to finding solutions? Because there are
This
residents.
isn't related to finding
on,
solutions. This
time
is
out.
related to, the council, most of us with which haven't been a part of this previously, recognizing whether this is an actual valid issue that should be in front of the council or not. And all I'm trying to point out is a matter of order that I don't believe it should.
There are residents that would like to start looking at solutions because come spring, I mean, this issue is, no matter what happened in the past, that is why we've done so much investigation. And that, again, we are going to make mistakes, okay? Councils make mistakes, cities make mistakes, government makes mistakes. The biggest thing about mistakes is that you learn from them and you move on. And we continue to go back, by continuing to go back and looking at it this way, I don't see how that moves us in the direction that we need to go to make it, to find solutions, right? I guess I'm not, what is that end result for us going back and reviewing this again?
The end goal is transparency, is being accountable to the community, is having a sense that, you know what, we may not like exactly how things have been handled or the manner in which it's in front of the council now, but we're going to lead.
But
we're
what are we
gonna be
looking for,
leaders.
though? I don't understand what we're looking for.
Well, and I guess that's just the difference between your view on this
But I'm
and
asking
my
you,
view
what
on
are
it.
we looking for exactly? Like,
We're looking to get the process in consideration
but
of
if
this
there wasn't a
expansion
good
of right.
process, how are we going to look
There
for
is
the
a good process.
We can create a better process, which is what we
We
need to do.
don't need to create a better process. We need to follow the city's own ordinances.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand how that relates to solving some of the things that our residents are asking us to solve right now.
I think,
Okay.
can I ask a quick question, clarification? What was the zoning request that you said it was not allowed to use? I apologize.
R1. Well, and it goes beyond that. It's
So just to
it's
clarify.
R1, it's R2, it's R3, 4.
So just to clarify, we do have a zoning use category chart for park dedication, parkland, do we not? P, for public?
Yes.
Yes, and so within that, you do have parks and historical sites as an allowed use.
Permitted, I see.
I see A for allowed for under P. For parks and historical use, page 3.
Well, again, the point I was getting at is you're talking about the development of public land surrounded by property in the R1 zoning district. I think what you need to do, or what you should do, is look at all the adjacent surrounding property in relationship to this publicly zoned property and where this falls into what's required of the city in order to move forward.
I would agree with you if it's zoned R1, but it has been always historically zoned as park, which we have a zoning district for, which we allow, permit, exclude. We have that and have had that. So you asking to go back to planning and zoning, I'm unsure, how would we ask for planning and zoning to say, look at this parkland, it's an allowed use for park, please make a determination? How would that alter? Help me understand that process.
I mean, you would present it no different than any other developer has to present a development plan. You know, you lay out a site plan, you have things surveyed so you know precisely on the site what's being proposed and where. You go over things like safety and infrastructure and roads and facilities and all the important things, a lot of the things that residents are raising question to and have concern with. Those are the things that you accomplish.
And do we do that when it's a conditional use?
Absolutely.
And so that would be a label C for conditional use, or excluded use, or interim use. So do I disagree with you? I'm just asking the question, how do we send it back to planning and zoning to ask them address a parcel identified as parks, which we have a zoning district for, and parks is an allowed use? If that's a process that you're asking to follow, isn't that already zoned as parks?
Well, parks is a very, I think we would agree, general term. There's many things that can be meant by parks. In this case, it happens to be disc golf.
Yes.
To me, that brings about a completely unique set of what are we looking at? What does this mean? Where are things going to be placed? How are we going to deal with law enforcement issues? I mean, you go through the process like you would require anyone else to go when they're looking at taking a raw piece, an undeveloped piece of property, and turning it into something else.
I would agree, but that's why we make them conditional use.
So does the city have a conditional use permit currently in place for the expansion of the disc golf?
Because it's an allowed use, no. If somebody came in and wanted to build a home on their property and it's an allowed use, it doesn't follow that process that you spoke about. If somebody came in and wanted to build a multi-dwelling unit on a property that was a conditional, yes, that is marked as a conditional use. There's a classification for a multi-dwelling unit in a specific zone that needs to be a conditional use permit, and that process is followed. But if it's an allowed use, it's an allowed use. It's an over-the-counter, get it done kind of deal.
I'm just, my point or goal for bringing forward the questions that I did is to just simply acknowledge that in my view, I think there's a procedural error that's been made. And I think a lot of that was the fact that this didn't go to P&Z.
I would argue
So-
the opposite, and we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But I know Mr. Chansky,
I was gonna
sorry.
ask you.
I would like to see
Yeah.
David provide his input to this.
From a planning and zoning perspective, I don't see any error. As again, the land is zoned park or public. Parks are an allowable use. How allowable uses mean, again, the same thing. In an R1, if a single-family home is an allowable use, they get to put a single-family home in there. Yes, do we review a plan to make sure it meets setbacks and things like that? Yes. Do they have to get a building permit? Yes, that's separate from the zoning code. However, that's state statute. State statute says if you adopt a building code, you have to have a building permit. That's separate from the zoning code. There is nothing in an allowable use that we can require something to go to the planning commission. It's allowable use. If the council wants to, again, this comes again a policy decision. If you want more review on things like parks, then you need to change the ordinance to require it to have more review. Have it be permitted, requires a permit, be an interim use or a conditional use. There was, how it is zoned now, from my professional perspective, there was nothing additional, no additional step the city needed required to do to get authority to do it. The council did review it. The council did approve the project. Staff worked through on the project. The Public Works Department followed all required statutes when it came to stormwater and things when it came to constructing the disc golf course. All those procedures were followed. The MPCA even came out and inspected the construction site. So from that perspective, I see no error in the development, procedural development. Again, ultimately it comes down to a policy decision. If the council thinks that park devices need to be a conditional use permit, then the ordinance needs to be changed.
I'd be interested in asking planning and zoning to review all parkland, and if we need to make them conditional use going forward, so we can have these public hearings. I'd like public planning and zoning to have that discussion going forward in the future.
And we can do that. Obviously, that's a take a motion from the council. I will say, generally, this is not uncommon. That allowable use parks are allowable use in public land, and for one reason, only the city can own public land, or only other public entities can own public land. So it kind of comes down to, well, if there's public land and we want to do something on the public land, the council is the authority that gives approval to do it. So and that's why most cities have not required conditional use permits on their own land, because they would be giving it to themselves. Unless, and you look in other areas, maybe they're looking at putting if the city wanted to put, say, like an amphitheater out there. Well, then maybe that's something from a planning perspective if you need to look at, because you look at stormwater and things like that. We're putting a lot of impervious surface out there. But generally, that's why cities don't, parks are approved, are allowable uses in parkland because it's owned by the city or another public entity, and they are going to be the ones to approve it anyway. And therefore, it would essentially goes under public scrutiny from just through the approval process. And again, I understand that the approval process might not have been as public as some would have desired, but that is why, generally speaking, parks are allowable uses on public land.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman? So yes, as I know there are residents here that are waiting for us to give some kind of direction, and I would like to have those residents come up and Can you please pull up the map that was in the packet? So I had them put this map in specifically for this part of the conversation because sometimes it's a little hard to understand where you live and where, you know, what hole you're by. And I think it would just give us some kind of idea as to, you know, what kind of solutions there are. So I would ask the first person to come forward, please. Name and address.
My name is Tracy Curtin. I live on Green Scene Drive. And I actually am just going to ask, because I know some of the residents wondered if we could speak after the disc golf in case there is flexibility in our responses or our solutions as to what they're proposing, if that would be okay with you, Mayor, and the council.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that okay? I guess it's just,
Yeah,
We
I
all
wasn't
kind of
sure if
come
I was going to
prepared.
have them come up and speak today, only for the
Okay.
fact that, again, we have read every email.
Okay.
We have heard every proposal. I know they have done an amazing job trying to get solutions out there, but I really think that it's best that we hear from the residents who live on the course.
Yep.
What they think is best in their specific property, and then does that align with what's available? And I think that that would be more of where I'd want to go with the conversation.
yeah, in that case, yeah, I can. All right. I'm going to try to make this smooth. I jotted down some notes.
And where exactly, what hole are you next to?
I think you have to go a little, scroll down. I believe hole 5
Okay,
comes towards our southern part of our property. Yep, hole 5. And then it is 6. So hole 5 comes directly at the, like, our house faces southwest. So that hole kind of comes right at our backyard. And then hole 6 is along the rest of our property on the west side there. Sorry, what was that? Did somebody mention something? Matt's not right? It's not the updated map.
that's okay, you can bring baby up or someone wants to. Yeah, okay.
That's actually the proposal map we presented 3 years ago. I did submit the current map of the actual exact layout as is. So that actually doesn't speak to exactly how everything is, so if we're going to be constructive today and get the
Yeah,
stuff.
do we have that? We can pull up.
You're just gonna, I don't need a minute, but if Ms. Curtin wants to keep moving
Yeah,
forward,
sure.
I would encourage that.
Well, I do want to start by saying thanks for everybody. I know I've been able to have conversations with all of the council, and I really appreciate your time and consideration. I know some of you have come out to look at the property again, and I think that was really important to us because seeing our vantage point from our backyard was really important to us because obviously it affects us daily. And, you know, previously I know it's obviously been established that things were maybe not transparent or done in the most ethical way, but I do really appreciate the leadership moving forward with a new council that, you know, we can, you know, move forward together. And we are here for solutions, and we do want to be actively involved and participate. Like, our family is obviously really invested in this community, and we're going to be here for decades. We have a 7-month-old, so she's going to be here for quite a while. So we definitely want to, you know, have our voice heard and be respected as well. I do think there is a bit of a difference in the weight amongst the issues between, like, our homes and our privacy. Obviously, we're there daily. We're going to be impacted by the recreation that is in that public space, no matter what it is daily, especially with the proximity that it is to our home currently. We definitely have lost our privacy. Some of you have seen that. The hole that I still do believe it is hole 5 that looks right into our kids' bedrooms, our primary bedroom, our living space, etc. There isn't enough coverage there. I know there's been talk about adding trees. I don't think that trees will grow well enough to give us privacy in the time span that our kids are growing up there. The disc golf course does start up on a hill and comes directly into our backyard. Obviously, there's concerns with that, with the speed of disc golfs, et cetera. I also have concerns about the noise of the basket that sits right, below our yard. So I'm kind of painting the picture so that everybody can understand it's not, 100 feet away from our house, or even I think it's probably closer than 50 feet. And there certainly are not, there's not enough trees and coverage to block sound or even discs, preventing that into our personal property from the public space. I guess if you're looking just specifically for solutions, I guess I can kind of skip some of these other points. Obviously, a big thing for us is, and I want to say maybe for other residents, I'm not going to speak for them, they can come up here as well, but removing holes is kind of a big thing. I don't feel that we have anything at this point to compromise with. Our privacy is not there. I can't give any more currently. From our vantage point there, I do believe it is hole 5 that ends up in our backyard there, that basket. And then there is the walking path, and then hole 6 borders our western line of property as well. I guess my big thing is if there were holes removed, specifically 5, that would give us back a lot of our privacy in our backyard. Obviously, we put a walkout basement into that backyard space. That's where we will probably spend a lot of time. So removing a hole, I think is obviously the easiest solution at this point. I do question if, thinking of my kids and the recreation and the public space, if a disc golf expansion is completely necessary, because I do believe that limits, if you see the disc golf as it is, hole 5 butts up to our southern border, and then 6 kind of keeps us in on the western border. And when we moved in, obviously we felt it was public space. We knew it was public space used for snowshoeing, hiking, that information was given to us. That's what we knew of the public space in Breezy Point. I know that there are other public spaces dedicated to the residents as well. And so, their homes abut public space. I don't know if there's, as far as I know, their public space remains, free of recreation at this point. There are some hiking and walking trails, I think, throughout some other spaces in town. But I would say for me, to be really inclusive in that space and make it for all ages and demographics, including, small kids all the way to, older people who enjoy hiking or walking through nature, because I'm not saying we can't use the public space. I'm not saying leave it alone. I'm saying maybe we can make it more flexible. Maybe it does become more walking and hiking paths. Maybe the cleared parking lot becomes an area that we make that part a little bit of a park into, or I know that, my kids don't have a park in this area without crossing the road, so maybe it becomes like a basketball court or pickleball. I know that pickleball is a big thing. There's not pickleball, as far as I know, in the area, and I know that a lot of ages play that as well. So I just think more flexible activities moving forward in the public space, and that purchase space that the city does own. I just see that as something that not only the residents will enjoy, but people visiting the resort are going to enjoy. Probably people from Pequot will come and enjoy. It is another activity. It does reduce the privacy, I guess it improves the privacy, I think, for the residents. If we're shrinking the walking paths, we're creating smaller walking paths in that space. And again, I would say, I know there is some terrain back there in areas, but it does still use the public space for the city of Breezy Point, and for people who are just, wanting to get out for a walk. There is a lot of walkability back there. There's a lot of space. It's not going to be one small loop. People can really enjoy the space, and I know it is used for snowshoeing. Our neighbors have told us that they've been back there, and we have tried to walk back there as well. So that is, I felt like, a solution that actually widens and creates a maybe more inclusive for all demographics in that space. And yeah, I mean, I guess if we're talking about what to do with that public space, those would be my solutions. If disc golf has to move forward, I think that removing holes has to be part of that compromise. And to allow us to have some of the privacy back, but allow the disc golfers. But if I were going to say all solutions, I would definitely add that in there. For walking paths, park use, different things like that for a wide range of ages. The last thing I want to say is, you know, I don't want to, you know, I'm hoping that when we move forward, you know, there's input, you know, I think I've knocked on a lot of doors of our neighbors, and, you know, everybody does have kind of unique opinions and ideas. And what I thought was great about that is, you know, we're gathering voices and we all have different perspectives, and they do come up with better solutions like that. So I do really feel like if we pause and just take a step back and start bringing in those voices, we actually could come up with really great solutions for the public space. And so I guess I would just call in council to go ahead and pause so that those discussions have a little bit of breathing room. And those solutions come forward. Like I said, I spoke with neighbors who enjoy the disc golf. And I have neighbors who maybe don't enjoy disc golf, but enjoy hiking and snowshoeing. And, you know, if there's ways to bring it all together, I just think there has to be a little bit of time to hear all those voices and bring solutions. So
Thank you.
thanks.
I just want to say too, definitely stay involved. I know one of our new Parks and Recs members, many members had mentioned how she wanted to bring in more of those ideas. So that is something that I know she has on the docket. So please stay
Great.
involved in helping that happen.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Jonathan Curtin. I am married to Tracy, so we're talking about the same property. I think when I think about this issue, and we're pretty new to the area, so I think we bring somewhat of a fresh perspective. We were not involved with the history of the genesis of this entire project. I think where we're at now, it feels very much that a lot of us are embattled, and it's difficult to step out of that bubble and think of the situation kind of in an out-of-the-box way. Because I'll be honest, I struggled to understand how we got from an existing disc golf course, which I understand all the accolades, I can understand it's a beautiful area back there, to 36 additional holes in a community of our size. So I want to read something just very quickly, which I think is very relevant to this conversation. And I have pointed it out, and again, I should have started with this. I'm extremely thankful to all of you for coming out to our property. When Tracy and I realized that what was happening behind our house was an expansion, you know, we did what we thought was best. We reached out to everyone. We said, hey, please come by, look at what we see. That's the best way to build empathy and understand the situation. So, okay, so the PDGA, I've heard this mentioned a couple times, so I've looked into it myself. It's the Professional Disc Golf Association, and it is the global governing body for disc golf course. So it's a global organization. They have on their website a disc golf course design elements page. And if you scroll down on that, there is a headline hole count, and I'll just read, it's a short paragraph. It says, most courses are 9 to 18 holes. There are several with 12, 24, and 27 holes. It's better to install a well-designed dual T 12-hole course than it is to install a cramped 18-hole course on the same piece of land. It's tradition the number of holes be divisible by 3, but it is not required. Keep in mind, put some emphasis on this last sentence, keep in mind if you're wanting to use the course for a sanctioned tournament, then 18 holes is the desired number. So, you know, I read that and I think of this situation, again, the concept of kind of stepping back and thinking out of the box. My belief is that moving forward with the expansion comes at an opportunity cost, right? We dedicate this land back there to disc golf, and then that's what it is. I know there are arguments that says we can use it for X, Y, and Z, But the reality is it's a disc golf course. There has to be very intentional design. And I know my children, right? I've got 3 of them. I know there's hundreds of kids that live in that neighborhood. They're not going to interject into a disc golf course. It's going to be used for disc golf primarily. That's its use. So I think it comes at an opportunity cost, and we shut the door to anything else that we might want to put back there. Personally, as a new resident, as a younger family, I would love to see all sorts of stuff back there. I'm not against any development of that land. I think there's a way to maintain the integrity, the privacy of the property owners, and still put things back there that, as Tracy said, benefits a diverse and broad subgroup of our community. Walking trails, biking trails. I know it was said that, we want to rival biking in Crosby. We can have our own bike trails back there. We can use the parking lot, tennis courts, pickleball court. I mean, the list goes on. So I would encourage council to consider taking a step back and thinking about what else could we do back there, because I think the possibilities are countless, right? Like, there's a lot of things we can consider. And we have 18 holes of an amazing disc golf course. So anyway, I also wanted to let you all know that I am personally rooting for you, and I look forward to many more projects that Breezy and this council will undertake, and look forward to supporting you in those projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Any other residents live on the course?
Built off, Green Scene Drive, Breezy Point.
What hole are you next to?
9 tee boxes right off my property line.
I'm sorry, what?
9.
9?
9. First of all, I had several things I wanted to discuss. Robert's rules, I'm assuming we still run meetings by Robert rules, and the previous councils didn't seem to, they changed the rules whenever they wanted to, it seemed like, and bent the rules and ignored some rules. Now, strict Robert rules states that anything controversial cannot be put in a consent agenda vote. It cannot. That was an illegal vote, as Councilman Scott has said. This whole thing should be shut down. That's my solution, is to shut the expansion down. And I have several reasons. First of all, did any of you believe the economic numbers that were presented here in February at the council meeting?
That's not what we're talking about today, Mr. Topt. We are talking about your specific property and potential solutions. So if you
I just gave you a solution. It needs to be shut down.
If you think that's what needs to happen, then
Yes,
please
it does.
make that recommendation, but I don't want to backtrack on.
Well, I think
We
we need,
have
I think we need to backtrack about the cannabis issue.
We're not
Because it's
gonna
going to be,
backtrack
it's going to be
about-
legal here in this
We
state.
are not talking about that today.
Why not?
We will have an opportunity. You are on Parks and Recs
Right,
board now.
right.
Guess what? It's all going to go back to Parks and Recs. You guys will put together the rules. You guys will address all of these issues. Today, we are not addressing cannabis.
Okay?
Okay?
So you said that there were more people that were for this, you thought, that sent, how many sent in that were residents? I'd like to know.
Administrator Chansky, do you have those numbers?
Because I have 52
I
names on
want to see
a
a vote of
petition.
hands. How many of you are residents and support the disc golf today? Okay. How many of you are residents and do not support disc golf? Okay, there's an even number in here, okay? There's not an overwhelming on both sides.
I got 52 signatures that state that they,
I'm not going to argue with you. I've
Well,
asked
I'm
for
just
to
giving you
clo-
facts,
if
Madam
your-
Mayor.
If your recommendation is to close it, I do not want to talk about cannabis.
Okay.
We are literally convoluting the
okay,
conversation.
my point of order is this. I was on the agenda in February, and my last line on that was that we need to shut the disc golf expansion down. It was never tabled. It just was ignored. I'm calling a point of order tonight. I want that voted on tonight. It'll be the first official vote we've had on this issue ever in the city council. I'm on Park and Rec, like you said. I did ask everybody if they ever sent it for action to the council. No one could remember ever voting on it.
Why didn't you vote on the, at the last Parks and Recs board for the public garden? Why did you decide not to vote on that?
Because I don't want us to spend taxpayer dollar on that. There's all sorts of
So what's the
grants.
point of being on Parks and Rec
There's-
board if you're going to turn on everything?
I didn't try, I
Madam
abstained
Mayor,
from
let's-
voting.
Let's come back to the disc golf.
I abstained from, how's that relate to disc golf? I'm just
How
curious.
is cannabis related to what I asked you to say today? It
What?
doesn't. I asked you to come up here and have a solution.
And I
for
just
that.
gave you a solution,
Great.
and I'm calling a
Then
point of
that's-
order. I want to
that
vote
is-
on that. I want to see you all go on the record about a vote on this tonight.
We are working on that right now, okay? We're trying to listen to
My
residents.
hope is that there's somebody, one of you files a motion, somebody has the courage up there to take a second so we can have a vote on this. And Mr. Barone, are you going to abstain from voting on this issue?
Do not answer that. Go, please sit down. Please sit down. We're not talking about that today. I've specifically asked for residents to come up here and talk about solutions. We're not talking about that.
Well, we were supposed to have a town hall on this, as you said, in February, which we never had.
He does not have to abstain from a vote.
Well, I'm going to read an email.
Mr. Toft,
I'm
please
gonna
go
read an
sit down.
email.
Mr. Toft, please go sit down. Please,
Yeah, transparency,
please.
right.
Lisa Toft, 8133 Green Scene Drive. I'm going to answer the question that you didn't allow my husband to answer. He fully believes in the garden. In fact, so much that he sought out different organizations that have it, how they paid for it, the grants. We went and talked to a wonderful woman who plays organ in a church after church to talk about it. He just wants to make sure if there had been no money attached to that at that high of amount, he would have approved it. He wants, and he did not disapprove it. He abstained
Okay,
because he wanted to have the vote. I just
At the
say,
end of the day, then
sorry
he
for all you
can't
wives
question,
out
then
there,
he
I had
can't
to do
question
that.
why we didn't vote on it at another council meeting, because there obviously are reasons why you don't vote certain ways at council meetings.
So I understand that. I just think
I
that
know.
it wasn't
okay.
public, so. But I didn't think it was fair of you to call
public.
my husband out that way. So let me ask the question I have.
He comes up here and calls us out on this. At the end of the day, do you have a solution for where you live?
I have a question and a solution, but it was
Okay.
something that was brought up regarding the zoning. It was actually a question that someone asked me too, because they're too afraid to come up now. Is the parking lot, I don't know how many lots it covered, how was that zoned? Was that R1? Or how did they create a parking lot in that area? That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know the answer.
I can't answer that this very moment, Madam Mayor. I'd have to look into that.
We will look into that. Anybody else? Mr. Olson?
I was late getting here tonight, so I did not catch any of the ground rules. I think that I have established a few. Tim Olson, 31908 Blue Ridge Drive. 11, 12 maybe. Middle house and them three on Blue Ridge. Anyway, my solution is similar to Mr. Toft's, also similar to the curtains. I really think that given the history of this project, the level of emotions involved on both sides of this project, the lack of transparency from previous council, and I am not pointing fingers at anyone up here tonight, but I think that it is in everyone's best interest to actually do the due diligence. So it's not an us and a them. It doesn't have to be that way. We could agree, right? I think that we could agree, given the opportunity, but has there ever been the opportunity? Anybody?
Not yet.
Anybody from the disc golf community? Have you folks had the opportunity to talk to the residents? Yes?
Yes, sir. Yep, I reached out to, actually talked to you too, sir, and I don't believe, you maybe didn't get that message, or
How did you reach out to me?
to Mrs. Walby.
I think what you're asking of us is whether there has been a public opportunity for us to interact
Exactly.
with city.
Or you directly to me directly to you.
With city approval.
And we're hoping, that's why today I wanted you to come up and tell us, based on where you live, because again, a lot of what we hear, there are specific issues directed towards people's properties, okay? What do you think the solution is to move forward? What do you think the best solution is?
I think the best solution is to stop all progress right now send this thing back to Parks and Recreation, let me and Mr. Humphrey have a conversation in person, publicly, so everyone can hear it, so it is on the record, and let's come up with a solution together. That is the only solution.
I like that solution. I do. I really do. And I'm happy you came up and you said that. I really am. So I thank you for that.
All right. If I could, and if I can't, I'm certain you'll tell me.
Tonight at least I will.
Okay. I have heard back and forth on all this for a year now, right? And I've heard about economic impact. And I'm not doubting or questioning economic impact of any group. What I would like to share with you guys, or have you think about, is the economic impact in place on every lot surrounding that thing. I am economic impact. My neighbors are economic impact. Year-round, 365 days a year. Funding this. Funding education for our children. That is economic impact. Not a couple of weeks a year, not 3 months a year. Year-round economic impact multiple times around that area.
And I do hope that, again, as we move forward, specifically to certain things like the cannabis or policing or speed or economic impact, we will be able to have those conversations, like you said, back in Parks and Recs Committee, where this, again, should go. So we will look at that in the future. So again, I do thank you for your recommendation. I do think that, again, what people have shown and what I appreciate is that there are a lot of people that actually want to work with everyone to find solutions. And I think that that's promising, and that's really the direction that we should go as a city.
Okay.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Is there anyone else who lives on the course?
Council, Madam Mayor, thank you for creating the space for residents to be heard. I'm just going to take a minute and pull up my notes.
And what hole are you? 10?
We're 11 and 12. We're actually the house farthest to the west,
Okay.
between 11 and 12. So I sit next to Tim Olson.
Okay.
So that is our home right there. And I'm going to be honest, I've struggled with what to say tonight because there are so many emotions that are tied to this whole project. And so I'm going to start by saying my goal is to be entirely respectful to everybody, council, community members, and everything else. So please interpret anything I say with that. And if I'm coming off as disrespectful, call me out on it, please. Because I certainly recognize that we are a community and that this is public land. And that it should be used to benefit the community. That being said, I think I've made it clear, as have others, that how this project came to my attention, we moved into our house in 2018, December of 2018. We've been community members in the greater Breezy Point area. I lived 15 years in Pequot, near Justin Bowles-Andalshek, where he lives now. And then we moved to Pelican Township to our cabin temporarily while we were between trying to find a home where we wanted to stay and finish raising our family. We have 6 children. Our oldest is 18, our youngest is 7. I served 10 years on the Pequot School Board, so I understand the challenge you guys are facing. It's a different kind of board. It's nonpartisan, but I get the uncomfortableness sometimes conflict brings and trying to find a path forward. So with that being said, I'd like to take you, if you'll go with me, on a journey. Okay, and then I would like to conclude with a couple of things. The journey I'd like to take you guys on is my own personal experience. I have one lens. I try to take other people's perspective and apply it to what I see, because I know I'm not the only perspective. I'm not the only lens out there. But a year ago on spring break, trees began falling in the public land that abuts my backyard. And my kids play back there. They had snow forts. They had brush piles that they had used to build forts. It wouldn't have been surprising for my kids actually to have been in the area where the logger was coming through at the time that they came through and felled trees. There was no anything, okay? So my husband and I were reasonable people. We started out with calling the city. We know Deb. We called her up, said, hey, Deb, what's going on? Is the city logging back there? Did we miss the notice? Because it's public land. You have the right to cut the trees. You have the right to do what you want. It's like a road. It's public land. You have never once heard me say that you don't have the right to do something with this because it is public land. It was dedicated to the public and the plat of White Birch 16, just like the roads, okay? So we assumed we missed the notification. We just, that's what we thought. Okay, we'll make sure our kids aren't back there. It's spring break, they're all home. We're playing in this area, so we'll make sure our kids aren't back there while the trees are coming down. That was the point at which we learned that the city was planning an expansion. So again, we assumed that we missed the notification. Where was the plan? Where are the holes going? How much land is going to be used? All of those details. If you know me, you know I'm a researcher. I'm a licensed abstractor in the state of Minnesota. I've been a title examiner for 5 years. I currently work for a national corporation as a title examiner, as a lead title examiner. I do this all over the country. I look at public records, I read them, I interpret them for closings, both commercial and residential. My husband is a real estate broker in the state of Minnesota. He's been in business as a real estate broker for almost 30 years. He grew up in this community. He grew up in Pelican Township, okay, which you guys provide policing services for. His family has been very involved in Pelican Township government. He knows the community. He loves this area. We're raising our family here. So we just thought we missed it, so we went looking. I read Park and Rec. I was told by Pat Wusso that it was very clearly documented how this was all laid out and that it had been planned for years. And I was told that I should read Park and Rec minutes. So I pulled Park and Rec minutes back to 2015 because the initial disc golf course started in 2013, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And that was 9 holes. And then it expanded to 18 holes. Okay, what you don't find if you read Park and Rec is a delineation of anything beyond 18 holes. It's just all assumed that there's an expansion, but there's no clear indication for a member of the general public to know what this meant. So I went, okay, showed up at the April meeting, expressed my opinion. I felt like I was minimized by the existing council, like I was disrespected. I was told to my face that my realtor was just trying to make money. I was told to my face that I should have been more involved. I was told that I'd misread the Park and Rec minutes. I tell you this to help you understand my journey and the emotion that is tied to this, because I started out trusting in my elected officials. And I got to the point where what my elected officials said wasn't true. So now where am I left? When this comes forward in January, I'm left with a new council. I don't know where you guys stand. I know what our previous council did, and I come to the meeting with fear that the new council will carry forward the same, what I perceived as disrespect to me as a resident who's clearly impacted.
So what do you think, moving forward,
Yep,
should be the solution?
yep, and I am getting there. So that was my journey. In February, I listened, and you asked us for solutions. So I went back to the drawing board, and I pondered, and I researched, and I considered, and I talked to people. And my solution was, and my ask is, one, that you would consider stopping the expansion altogether. That's my first ask. If you're unwilling to do that, my second ask is that you send this back to Park and Rec for a redesign, potentially removing up to 9 holes. Or considering the beauty of sending it back to Park and Rec is that you could vet this a little more thoroughly. Is this the right location? Is this the right design? Is this the best way to minimize impact on existing residents? Here's my argument for why, okay? I bought in, and there was no disclosure that there was an expansion, okay? My husband called the city and asked, hey, what are the plans for development? Are you planning to pave the road? Nobody told us that there was a disc golf course expansion in the works, okay? We called and asked, and we were not informed. So we bought in believing that Outlot A in White Birch 16 would continue to remain essentially undeveloped trails, recreation type of land, or that if it would change, that the city would come forward with a process and there'd be some notification and we could have a voice. So the beauty of sending it back to committee is you can bring it forward with a recommendation, you can have a public hearing. If that process had been followed, I wouldn't be standing here because I would have said I had my day, I missed it, and now I have to live with it. The other thing is, you can publicize anybody who buys land now along, if this is how the disc golf course continues, anybody who buys land along that knows they're buying next to a disc golf course. And in essence, by sending this back, you help make me whole because I have the opportunity to comment on the impact to me as an individual. And so I would ask that that be something you consider. And then lastly, I just want to, I know this isn't part of a solution, but I feel like we need to take a few minutes and celebrate some things. So if you'll allow me, Madam Mayor, I'd like to take 2 or 3 minutes and just read through some celebratory statements that I was able to come up with in literally less than 10 minutes. I want to celebrate the work of the City Council. I want to celebrate the work of my neighbors. I want to celebrate the work of the community at large, both resident and non-resident. And while I have a hoped-for outcome, that is not where I want to focus. First, I'd like to say thank you, genuinely and sincerely thank you, Council, for hearing me, for hearing us. Thank you for listening to my concerns. Thank you for coming to my home and demonstrating a desire to understand my concerns. Thank you for taking time to allow conversation, hard conversations, for being willing to engage in hard but good conversations. Thank you for valuing my perspective on a community issue. Thank you for wanting the good of Breezy Point. Second, I would like to draw your attention to how one issue has brought a community together. Okay, now comes the challenge of deciding if we will work together, but I thank you for creating the space for us to be able to come together. Third, I'd like to celebrate the fact that the community has responded to the city's request for how do we move forward, from planting trees and building blinds. Thank you, Disc Golf Course Club members. To possibly redesigning part of the course, to possibly sending the whole project back for reconsideration and a formal plan. All of this demonstrates creative minds in our community. Fourth, I would like for everyone to hear, and if they can, acknowledge that everyone involved tonight believes they are advocating for the best interests of our community. Fifth, how many of us have met neighbors or community members we likely never would have crossed paths with before? You know, regardless of which side you favor. I'm willing to bet you've had conversations with neighbors and community members you otherwise would not have had the opportunity to chat with. Sixth, much data has been gathered and disseminated. I think we recognize mistakes. I think we put processes in place for moving forward to avoid those in the future. And I think we build. We've been instructed, if we want to learn, on how our actions affect other people. And we can take away the fact that processes in government are a good thing and avoid injury to everyone, including, arguably, disc golf course players, members. Seventh, last thing, if we choose to see it, we can see that our council has good intentions, whether they side with our side or not. So thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. I definitely agree that something good does come from things like this. I have met many of you that I probably never would have met. Again, doesn't matter what side you're on, we are all residents of Breezy Point. So thank you, Valerie, for pointing those things out, because I think it's really important that we hear that from residents as well. Sometimes all we hear is negative. So these meetings are not usually very happy. So thank you, I really appreciate that. Is there anyone else that lives on the course that would like to come up? Okay, I would like council to discuss after hearing some of the residents.
Somebody has their hand raised.
Oh.
Shane does.
May I approach?
Yeah,
If you would allow.
You're allowing him to speak, are we
are you
allowing others?
speaking?
I wanted to speak specifically to hole 5, if that would be all right, in Jonathan's situation.
I don't think we need it, honestly.
Okay.
I don't. I think that it probably won't make a difference in kind of the direction that we go. Okay?
All right.
All right, thank you.
I mean, guess I'll start. I think everyone on council has spent a considerable amount of time on this issue and listened to property owners on both sides. We've received a lot of feedback from non-residents that like the course and use it. Initially, I was thinking a redesign would be the way to go. But when Michael provided the document that is part of the packet that's available to the public, I went through every step, every link, and looked at the comments. And yes, technically, the boxes were checked, and the course was approved going from Park and Rec into the budget. The part that bothered me is there was nothing in there about resident feedback. And that residents wanted this course early on. The expansion, and this is specific to the expansion, we have 18 holes of disc golf. And to start a project of this scale and not notify the people in the surrounding, the property owners that surround it, I think is wrong. I don't think anybody intentionally tried to hide things. I think Park and Recs does a good job, but I think the city has learned that you have to communicate this with residents prior to this undertaking. Have public input, even if there's no state statute stating you have to, but it's the right thing to do, I feel. And actually, I was leaning towards having a community task force and trying to find people for, against, and indifferent to try and determine what is the best use for this public space. And it is a public space and will be used in some way, shape, or form. Now, whether that's a disc golf course, whether it's biking trails, whether it's, multi-use, we know that in the winter you can do snowshoeing, sledding, cross-country skiing. And I had actually talked to Jonathan Curtin about this today, because I don't want to, I'm not saying stop the disc golf course. And now, listening to Tim Olson, Valerie Wallin, which I've met with and I've spoke with, going back to Parks and Recs, if residents, property owners are allowed, and if somebody, is a member of the club and wants to speak, but try to find common ground and a solution. If it ends up being a disc golf course, it's a disc golf course. Is there a redesign? If it ends up being multi-use, because I know Council Member Maroney had mentioned, I believe it was the February meeting, he had proposed a park where you don't have to cross Highway 11. For whatever reason, it never went. Now we have this land. I agree, I like the suggestions of, can it be where the parking lot is? Can it be, if it's not a disc golf course, can it be a basketball court, pickleball courts? Can it be a pavilion that residents, can picnic, bike trails, but it's for the property owners, residents of this city to decide. And people are more than welcome that, are outside the community to provide input. But I feel it was not done, and it needs to go to Park and Rec, because I think I've heard Tim and Valerie, and see what comes of it. The notification process, as Mayor Zierden alluded to, it needs to change. I know they're working on staff communication plans, and we need to learn from our mistakes. But I think it gets people for and against, and it gives the community a chance to say what is the best use for this land. And that's what needs to happen. And again, I don't think there was any intention to hide the expansion. I think Parks and Rec staff do a good job. There's not a state statute. People do it all the time. In my opinion, if you don't engage the public, you're doing minor improvements to an existing park, not undertaking an expansion. And I couldn't find anything, again, for residents that said, yes, we want 18 more holes. So I would agree and propose that we send it back to Park and Recs. And that, I think, would accomplish the same thing as a community task force. It's a lot easier to manage with Parks and Rec. And I would ask Parks and Rec, use social media, whatever means we can get to get as much resident input, property owner input, people that use the course. I welcome anybody that comes into this community. There is economic benefit. You can't quantify the numbers, I don't think, but there is benefit. And that's what I'm proposing.
Councilmember Jens, I think you and I probably have some similarities in what you just shared and kind of my thoughts as to what we've been on this and what we can do. Something that I mentioned running for this office was, I think all too often local government gets into areas that, quite simply put, government shouldn't be in. And so I start some of my thought on this, no different than on other things, as to what is the role of Green Point city government in operating and managing in maintaining a disc golf course. I suppose some could argue that there's a role and there's a time, and it's quite fine for cities to be providing those kinds of amenities. infrastructure and public safety, and really those foundational things that the city is responsible for providing to the community. I surely don't rank an expansion of a disc golf course up there as high of a priority as a lot of those other foundational government responsibilities that a city has. My concerns with the disc golf course expansion have been pretty consistent. Lack of process, lack of community engagement and involvement, and I think frankly a lot of questions that have been asked and continue to be asked that haven't been answered. And to me, if you can't do most anything regarding how you use taxpayer dollars with clear intention and transparency and community involvement, I say it's probably not the time or place for it. But at the end of the day, I really think the question in front of this council, and I'm guessing that at least 3 of them understand what I'm talking about because it was something presented at the newly elected officials conference that I attended. And that is, we all, as council members, have a responsibility to make sure that whatever decisions we make satisfy a public purpose. So what's public purpose? Well, you ask 10 people, and I'm sure you'll get 10 different responses. But if you look into what the Supreme Court of Minnesota has identified as overall a definition of public purpose, it gets to the benefit of the residents of a community. It gets to the benefit of the taxpayers in a community. Now, I say that with no disrespect to those that are here and have been involved with this that are not residents of Breezy Point. I'm only bringing it up and stating it because it's a fact. There's all kinds of literature from the League of Minnesota Cities and elsewhere on the idea of public purpose. And that's really where I struggle. I don't know what the public purpose for an expansion of a disc golf course is. I don't really know how it serves our residents, the taxpayers, the people that pay the bills in Breezy Point. I really don't know. And I think in part because it's one of those questions that have been asked that hasn't been answered. I think we can all understand and see that it serves, in a real broad sense, a public purpose. But again, I think the question in front of us and our responsibility is how does it serve the majority of the residents and taxpayers in Breezy Point? Again, this idea of public purpose, I struggle with that. I don't know that it exists. And I think in part I struggle with it because we have an 18-hole disc golf course that's a great amenity to the community. I've talked to many people who have golfed there and really have enjoyed it. So, I don't know, kind of feels a bit like government overreach. Government trying to somehow impose the will of some onto the many in pursuing this expansion. I don't see how it's needed. It'd be different if we had, information out there, if there was a clearinghouse that we could go to and say, if you've had an 18-hole disc golf course, as a publicly owned course over X amount of time, what's the economic benefit? I don't know that information exists. I certainly haven't found it. And we can come up with all kinds of arguments and this and that about how people are going to spend money buying gas and staying and renting rooms and all kinds of things, but I'm the kind of person that operates on facts, and if I can't understand it, if I can't see the return on investment, then I'm sorry, I can't get behind it. Most probably understand where I'm at on this. I would rather see it go away. I don't think that just because this land is dedicated to public, that it means that it ought to be developed. I think a good share of the intention of public land and land development is that it stays open space. It stays there so people can enjoy nature, among other things. So I think in some way the city's gotten this a little bit twisted and wrong in terms of identifying it as public space and therefore well, we're just gonna go in and develop it into some kind of a park amenity. I guess that's, yeah, those are just some comments that I want to make at this point.
All right, thank you. Councilman Ball, Councilman Maroney?
Make sure I'm on. As everybody knows, I've been in favor of the disc golf course since its inception. We've heard from residents who abut the property about due process. We've talked about due process. Mr. Scott, you've brought up due process of saying we didn't do due process. Mr. Jensen has brought up saying start over. It's not saying cancel, stop, cease, but it is saying push the pause button, start the process the right way. And to me, I believe that's good. I think we're discussing it. It's not saying take it off. It's more or less telling Parks and Rec of, hey, we're going to push a pause button. Is this still the best solution for this? I've heard pickleball. I applaud the pickleball. Basketball court, that's one thing I never even thought about for that parking lot. And I think that's great. And I think this, with some new viewpoints, we have 7 members of the Park and Rec committee now. It may spark some more discussion on the Park and Rec of what is the best solution. Just to be prepared, if the Park and Rec decides to pursue that the best recreation use is the disc golf course, then it's also coming back and asking, what's the redesign look like? How do we amend these for the concerned citizens that have brought forward their concerns of their property? I like that. I'll always admit that we failed on the communication piece. I've admitted that at the last meeting. And I think, Mr. Scott, you said it the best at the February meeting. We should not have had this happen this way. That this could have been very easily been a welcomed amenity to the community had the people been involved and had the opportunity to speak on it, right, wrong, or otherwise, and have been informed and kept in the loop. And I think for the last 2 months, we've seen that. We've seen the desire to have residents be involved and communicate what their desires are. We've heard both objections from property owners. We've heard the comments from abutting property owners that are for it. We've heard comments from both afar and near, for and against. I, for one, have talked to people who have not emailed in, who are not here tonight, that are both for and against. So I've had communications. I know we all have had multiple communications. I do want, I'm kind of ending with that I like that idea of going to the Parks and Rec. However, Madam Mayor, I know you seized Mr. Toft on a question to me, and I do want to bring it up because the council did receive an email with a number of social media posts showing my desire for the disc golf course, showing the enthusiasm for the disc golf course, me being one of 5 votes that moved the disc golf course forward. And there was an email asking for me to be abstained from the vote of the decision of what the future is of the disc golf course. And while I don't believe it's the decision of the community to ask of that, it is all proof of me showing favoritism for the disc golf course. Which is interesting, if we can't get excited about something that we're here to promote, if I said, yay, we're going to pave a road, does that mean I have to take myself off? I'm a little confused on that. However, what I want to ask is actually, I'm going to make a motion, Madam Mayor, tonight, right now, because I believe it's actually up to the 4 of you to decide if I should abstain from the vote. You've all seen the document that was presented. So I'm going to make a motion right now, Madam Mayor, that myself, Councilman Maroney, to be able to vote in our determination of the future of the disc golf course expansion. And I'm abstaining from this vote. So I am making a motion to see if anybody wants to second that.
I guess I would not be in favor of that because I agree in the fact that if I start playing disc golf, which actually now because of all of this I want to go play, just because you are in favor of something doesn't mean that you should have to abstain from that vote. And I think statutorily too, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because then that means we could never be in favor of anything that we vote on. And so then does that mean that a council member up here who isn't in favor of the disc golf course, that thinks it should be shut down, that they should abstain because they have that point of view? So I feel like, unfortunately, I do appreciate that you've come and brought that forward, but I don't think it's a good precedent to set, especially when I don't believe that it is a conflict of interest.
Madam Mayor, point of order.
Yeah.
You don't have a motion before you, so you aren't supposed to technically be having discussion. You have a motion and no second.
So I'll call a motion again. I'm making a motion to allow Mr. Maroney to vote on the future of the expansion.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, already had
Okay.
my discussion.
Yeah, so there's, in my experience, something that is referred to as a direct conflict of interest, and that gets to activities that a public official puts forward that ends up having them in a position of receiving some type of reward as a result, economic or otherwise. And then there are those things which I think probably fall into the majority of situations where it's a perceived conflict. And I wouldn't be being upfront and transparent, Councilmember Maroney, if I didn't say, I think there is a perception of a conflict. And I think a lot of that comes from different things that you've done, your involvement with websites and things like that for the Golf Course Association. So, I'm not, coming out and saying you in fact, did wrong and should have known better, but I'm saying oftentimes what is perception is people's reality. And I guess I would find myself probably hard to vote in favor of you, in fact, voting.
So your perception is that I have, okay, yep, thank you.
Councilwoman Ball? I've not heard from you tonight.
So again, just as everybody else, I appreciate all the emails that I've read.
Well, just discussion on my motion right now. Sorry.
I guess I also agree that Michael should vote.
Should vote?
Should, be allowed to vote on the disc golf course.
So that,
So the motion on the floor, there's a second, we've had discussion. Call the question. Again,
your motion was,
stated as to allow Councilman Maroney to be able to vote in the determination of the future of the disc golf course expansion.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye?
More thing you want to add?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, all those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So you will vote on this?
Point of order, Councilmember Maroney's vote on that. If he,
I'm sorry, I was abstaining from that vote.
thank you.
Sorry.
There just was no call for abstention, so I just want to make sure.
I apologize on that. Nope, I was abstaining from that vote.
So to clarify, that vote is 3 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention. The motion does pass.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead, Councilwoman Ball, and just kind of walk through what you think about the whole thing tonight and what you recommend moving forward with the disc golf course?
Just, Councilman Maroney, did you have a final position?
Nope, I was done with discussion. Sorry.
So I guess I agree, reviewing the disc golf expansion is appropriate in light of everything that happened. I was around when it was approved in the budget. I remember having discussions on it. I remember not initially wanting to fund it that year. I think we ended up funding it over a few years. We agreed to it, so I do recall that. pause and like give feedback on what we could do. If we're sending it to Parks and Rec, I would prefer that, you know, the council is giving them a recommendation as to what to do moving forward when we're getting that feedback from residents and non-residents. So, for example, Councilman Roman, you said you've always been in favor of the disc golf course expansion. So would the recommendation to Parks and Rec be, yes, Parks and Rec, the city council recommendation is to do X, please work with residents and non-residents to accomplish that goal. So at this point, I'm in favor of the expansion. I'm not in favor of dismantling it and making it something that's not a disc golf course. I mean, certainly it can be used for other things. We can add other public purposes to that space, and I'm not in favor of that. To agree, we should work with the residents that want to put some sort of remove holes, add trees or buffers or whatever we can do so it doesn't take 30 years for a tree to grow. Accomplish some of that privacy that those residents are looking for. Those are the things that I would want to send to Parks and Rec, not just send it to Parks and Rec and start all over. Has been going on for a long time. I agree we should have sent out some sort of a notice to residents that were surrounding that expansion. I think that was handled well, and I agree with that, and it's something we can improve on in the future. I don't think it's something that we've ever had a precedent for. This is the first time something like this has happened, where we've had sort of parkland residents surrounding it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think even here tonight, it has been really great to work with people, even if they don't agree, but when everyone is respectful of one another. And I know there's been a long history in the last 2 years of, you know, different things between residents, and I think that if there is that level of respect to work together, I do believe that a solution can be reached. I do think that a pause would be a good thing. I would almost make the recommendation, instead of this portion of it going to Parks and Rec, that individual residents surrounding could work with staff on their modifications. Staff is going to be able to work a lot faster. And then staff would then bring those recommendations to us to vote on. So it would not be, you know, that one meeting a month that you're attending, that the work on individual residents, they could come in immediately and start working with staff on proposed changes. So I think that, I mean, I'm in favor of either one, but I think staff could work a lot faster and start that process immediately, and I think we would get the same end result if we wanted to move forward quicker on immediate results. I want to give you an opportunity. Is that something that you think staff could do?
We will do as the council directs, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
My only concern with that is staff's only working with the residents on the course. I want to see input from as many residents as possible. Is the disc golf course the best use of the property? Is there other uses?
Go ahead.
I am a resident of Breezy Point. I'm curious if the residents that are not directly abutting the property.
Oh yeah, you'll have to come up and state your name and address.
I'll ask though, if you're allowing one person to speak, are you allowing multiple?
Oh, no one else has raised their hand, and we have not heard from him yet in public, so I would like to give him the opportunity.
Good evening. My name is Travis Moser. I live at 32433 Cedar Street. I am in fact a resident of Breezy Point. I've been listening throughout the course of the meeting. I did watch the video of the last meeting. This is my first time ever attending a city council meeting, and as Councilman Scott said last time, he
says that he tends to take a patient approach, sit back and watch and listen. That's what I've done. The meeting last April, I was in Utah, couldn't attend, even though I was begged to join. Kind of hard to do on 6 hours notice. Wasn't able to reach the last one as well because I was out of town. So I did prepare something I would like to read through, and then I just want to give a couple thoughts on some things that I've heard this evening, just to kind of voice for those of us who aren't there. I do also.
Under 3 minutes, how quickly can you get through?
Can I cram maybe 5?
I think we would,
All right, I'll do what I can. Tell me to
just-
shut up whenever I need to.
Well, I think what I would really like is just like what, that direct feedback, because when you talked about more
Well-
the direct feedback to what we had just discussed about resident input. I think
So,
that would be the main point that I would
believe
want.
that I have a very particular and important viewpoint on the experience related to this. So I play at the disc golf course over 100 rounds per summer. As they talked about the number of rounds logged on UDisc, it's like 1,600, call it 2,000. I play over 100 myself. I'm there every other day. I firmly believe there's no resident of the city or visitor to the city that is there more than I am. Okay? I'm there morning, afternoon, evening,
Do you live on
weekdays,
the course?
weekends. I do not.
Okay.
I live 5 minutes away. I don't believe there's a single probably human being that is out there more than I am. So I think I have a really good perspective on the experience that goes on out there, and that's what I want to attest to.
Well, and I think that's kind of not what exactly we were talking about tonight. It
Okay,
was
that's
more
fair.
of just being on the course and what the residents on the course are facing. And so it was more of the,
And I can attest to that
yeah,
as
and
well.
it was more of, I think what I was looking for is, are you wanting to also be involved in the conversation moving forward if it went to Parks and Recs?
That could be, yes.
Okay.
So in reply to some of the things this evening, people have talked about some other ideas. One of the ones people talked about is pickleball courts.
Yeah, so I'm gonna I just wanted that comment about what we had discussed, but I do want you to come back when we are discussing these other things and be involved in that conversation,
Okay.
okay? So, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
I kind of like Mr. Jensen's idea about sending it back to Parks and Rec and an empty slate. Let them push the pause button. Ask themselves, is the disc golf course, the expansion, the right way? Is there a multimodal trail that is just fine? Are we good with where we're at? Do we want to expand? Do we want pickleball? Do we want basketball? What does Parks want? I disagree with Mr. Scott on where does city have. I think we have a right to do parks. You kind of say, do we overstep our boundary on doing that? A park is something that all community can do, and I think that is something that we should do. Disc golf course, yes, I think you might pose the question of, do we need to be in that park, or is it a pickleball or basketball court? But I think parks is a general government concept that we do need to have, and that's why we have a Parks and Rec department and a 7-member department. Ms. Ball recommended of having a recommendation of saying we want to continue the expansion. I don't agree with that, and push that reset button completely. Give the due diligence of the process that the residents that are abutting the property want. That might be a strange thing for me to say again, because I've been the one who's been a strong proponent. As it's seen, I have a perceived benefit to it. I'm here to do the right thing.
Right.
So that'd be my recommendation, but.
And I do agree, though, with Councilman Ball in that we want to make sure that, because one of the things that I've heard from Parks and Recs is that they have not been given a lot of direction, right? They had a lot of their meetings canceled last year, and we have not done a very good job of, saying here is what it entails to be on the Parks and Recs board. Here is Robert's rules, which obviously, I'm not an expert in yet. And so I think there is a lot that, we need to make sure that we are providing the Parks and Recs board with the resources to be successful in doing this. Because if we just hand it over without, that really good path forward on how to reach that, I think it could take more time, and I think that we could be looking at not really getting, that kind of outcome that we want. So I think we have to be very just very thoughtful in how we are directing them to move forward so that they understand completely what their task at hand is and what the goal is.
And if I could, just to clarify, I, certainly don't want anything that I say to be misinterpreted. My reference to government overreach is when you look at the park amenities that we have in Breezy Point, how many expanded or duplicate public beaches do we have? How many expanded or duplicate basketball courts do we have? Or play areas for young kids? Not many. And yet, we are embarking upon spending tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars on an expanded disc golf course. I think you have to acknowledge a pretty niche part of the community. And again, I've said it before and I will continue to say it. What is the public purpose? How do the residents of this community benefit from the expansion of disc golf? We have an existing 18-hole course. That's a great amenity. I'm not arguing that. I'm just simply trying to, bring up the point that when is enough enough when it comes to most anything that city government does. I think, by all accounts, 18 holes is sufficient for the size of a community of Breezy Point. And, one of the things we didn't address or give a whole lot of attention to tonight is the information, and I appreciate city staff for taking the time to pull this together. In considering, do we just leave that area in a natural state? What are we looking at for related cost in doing that? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that any physical improvements have been done to the expanded site at this point. Have there been tee boxes put in place? Have there been hard improvements made?
Everything is in place except the tee baskets themselves. So all 18 tee pads have been poured. Really, again, the only thing that is remaining on to be done to this course to make it, quote, playable is put the baskets out there and do the final grade of the parking lot.
So with that in mind, I'll actually make a motion that we direct city staff to expend the $3,664 to restore the area part of the expanded disc golf course to its natural state. I think making that small investment in undoing what's already been done there is going to put this community in a much better economic position. We're not going to have concerns about ongoing upkeep and capital improvements, and really where does the money trail stop when it comes to something like this. I've said it before, I'll say it one last time, we already have an 18-hole golf course. I think that's sufficient.
Is there a second on that?
Not for me.
All right, so that motion does not carry. I think that again, I think what we've actually are, the four of us, yeah, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I would be fine with also having the residents come and speak with Joe, the administrator, or Daniel, assistant administrator, to discuss through their concerns as well. If there was some potential need for other public input, there could probably be a workshop that could be had to discuss other ways, but I really think sending it to Parks and Rec without any direction is not going to accomplish anything, unfortunately. That's my opinion. I want to give closure to this. I want to move forward on this issue and close it out so we can work on other things for the city.
So if the motion is to send it to Parks and Rec to solicit resident input, property owner input, and take the input of the people in surrounding communities to determine if the best use of the land is a disc golf course or there's other uses that better fit the needs of the community. Is that enough direction for Parks and Rec?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. So what
I
would
just
be,
think- So just knowing the history of this project and where it's been and where it is now, I think we would either need to direct Parks and Rec what they should do with the land or not, and then for them to move forward with that. So if it's soliciting feedback, I think there's other ways to do that than send it to Parks and Rec. If we want to solicit feedback, we can have a workshop where we can do some more surveys, which we have done in the past for the
Community
plan,
center.
for the plan.
Oh, comprehensive plan.
You know, we've done that to solicit feedback on, you know, what people want in the city, so I think we have some of that already. I think we need more, we could agree to that, but I think there's other ways of doing that than sending it to Parks and Rec. I don't think that's what Parks and Rec is there to do. I think Parks and Rec is there to do what the city council recommends for them to do, and I think it needs to be more direct for them to.
Madam Mayor, if I may, this is, I speak on this only request, again, a little bit of what Councilmember Ball is going to, but more from staff's perspective. Again, going back to as the people that are going to be tasked with carrying this out for you, bringing this to the Parks and Rec Committee, guiding this conversation with them, is my one question, and this is where I do side a little bit with Councilmember Ball in having some parameters about the discussion. The only reason is I'll say in my experience many times over, when there are no parameters, discussions can go everywhere. They can end up being endless. And at some point, it comes down to a decision has to be made. And when there's no parameters, again, these conversations can go on and on and on because the possibilities are endless. Not a disc golf course. What about a kickball field? What about a baseball field? What about a soccer field? What about pickleball courts, tennis? You know, there's a million different opportunities out here. And so there's one, I would say I think eyes and staff and maybe in the Parks and Rec Committee, and there are members of the Parks Committee here as well, and maybe beneficial actually would even maybe hear from some of them tonight of what they might benefit from direction-wise, is to give some parameters. And maybe even some deadlines. Like, we would like to hear from you by a certain time. Again, we will as staff will do our best to direct them through, but we kind of need to know how do you want us to help them, guide them. Also, you know, I will say, again, the benefit of having a Parks and Rec Committee, public engagement, absolutely necessary in this next step process. I do just want to warn against, for lack of a better term, community build. Again, this is what your Parks Committee is here for. Yes, let them bring in the public and say, what kind of things would you like to see in this land? If not a disc golf course, then what would you like to see? But ultimately, it needs to be the 7 of them who make the decision, who make a recommendation back to you. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
And I do agree. I'm not at this time in favor of dismantling the disc golf course. I think, again, there are a lot of residents, like Mr. Moser, who play, and a lot of families, a lot of kids, a lot of people are looking to disc golf now. It's something that they never even thought of as something that they would do, and I think it's actually a great thing for kids to do and a great thing for people to get out and do. And so I don't think that that's really, I think a lot of the issue, again, is the properties that have been really affected on the course. And I think directing them to work specifically on specific solutions to their properties, I think is going to be the best solution for them. And then also Parks and Rec, they can then say, what else can we do with this alongside the disc golf course that is also going to benefit the community. So I think there's two different things that can happen here that I would serve a purpose for everyone, and that is addressing some of the major issues with the residents on the course, and then also adding to the course other things besides disc golf that the residents can enjoy.
I don't know how you can do that, though. Like, the parking lot is there because of the expansion, they need parking. So you take that out of the equation, at the end of the day, what really can you do to the course? I mean, to make it multi-use.
Why would we take the parking?
Well, okay, I mean, you're talking about doing other things with the course or add-ons,
Doing and everything, and
but
that's. Yeah, seasonal, but that's what someone on Parks and Rec says, yeah, quickly.
My name is Michael Cuff. I live at 32475 Cedar Street over on 39th and 11. Okay, I've been building in this community for 38 years. Breezy Point Resort, Walmarts, all of the different things. There's a couple things that is just silly that I've been looking at here. First of all, is it completed? It's right close to being completed, but you guys are talking like it's a brand new thing. You can't, it's already there. So all you can do is go forward from that, okay? The assumption that things are R1, or residential and stuff, and then this thing here is in the middle, that doesn't make that R1. You got lakes that are sitting surrounded by housing, that's all
Yeah,
R1
and
in
we
the lakes,
understand
okay? Here's where you gotta go from here. What are you gonna do to complete it? Or are you just gonna leave it as it is?
Yes, and that's
There's
what we're.
money already put in
Right,
there.
and that's what we're trying to get to. So,
Right.
Thank you.
I know the residents have an issue because they weren't really truly notified.
Yep, we
That's
understand
something that the Parks and Rec people are gonna have to get with everybody. Now, on the recusal thing, if you're gonna recuse him, you'd have to recuse him, and you'd have to recuse anybody that is associated with this thing that has for or against on the Park and Rec department.
Okay, so we are gonna try to get to.
That's what you guys are gonna have to
Yep.
go to.
Thank you.
And I didn't mean to point you out, Scott, I know you, and it's, but, you know, you're adamant against it, you don't want it, he wants it, and I'm just saying, it's already there, so you gotta figure out what to do with it now.
Thank you, and that's kind of what we're working towards right now. Councilman Maroney, do you want to go ahead and comment again? I know you had commented, and you have different views on this. What are your thoughts on how to move forward?
I think that the overwhelming response that we heard from the property owners that are abutting it was due process was not followed. Public opinion was not gathered at that time. But I look back at what we've looked at for the last 2 months. What more will we see different than what we've received? Would we see different emails, new fors, new against? I mean, we've heard all the complaints of why we shouldn't. We've heard multiple compliments of why we should. Will we see something new?
In response to what are you?
If we send it back to Parks and ask them get public engagement, I feel like we've asked for public engagement for the last 2 months. What more would we see?
But we have not asked for public engagement of, is there other uses for the course? So I would disagree with that. I know it's completed, I get it, but I'm still stuck on what the residents' voices, they really weren't consulted on the expansion of the disc golf course, in my opinion, from looking through your document. So how do we make it right? And if it ends up as a disc golf course with a recommendation from Parks and Rec, it ends up. But there's resident input. I agree there has to be direction and timelines, but
I think the input if we would have been for the expansion, even if we would have gotten input, it was Parks and Rec's recommendation to expand the disc golf course, which we put into the budget, which we approved. The feedback we would have gotten would have been, want it or we don't want it, or how it could be improved by the property, but would it have been to not to do something else with it?
I don't think,
I mean,
I just don't think that the recommendation was made, and I can't find any supporting documentation in any of the notes, in any of the meeting minutes, and Michael put it together, the timeline, that this is actually what the residents wanted. And maybe there was resident support, but due to no documentation on that, it was just like the recommendation was made for the disc golf course expansion, but I could find no supporting evidence that, yes, the residents wanted it. And we have 18 holes, and if it ends up as an expansion on the recommendation of Park and Recs, I'm fine with that. But to me, it was just a recommendation that was made, and I can't find any supporting documentation on it. As to, there was overwhelming resident approval. We had X amount of residents speak at this meeting that wanted an expansion. I can't find it. It isn't in the document Michael provided us.
And there's a relatively easy way, I think, to get at where the voters at. I mean, if people really feel as though the expansion is a beneficial community need, just ask the voters to vote on it. I mean, what would be wrong with that approach, right? We can sit up here, we can offer all kinds of opinions and this, that, and the other thing, but at the end of the day, we're here to represent the voters. And if we're basically mixed or unclear or not sure on really at the end of the day what should happen, then I say, what's wrong with putting it back to the voters and letting them have the final say?
So what would it take to do that?
I don't think it's for or against the expansion necessarily. I think it's the whole placement.
I think it's a lot of things. I think it's the reason why people moved here in the first place, and that is part of the Northwoods character that we've just annihilated over 30 acres by removing 2,000 trees. It's more than process, it's more than involvement, it's more than one thing. And, you know, I don't want to come across as, you know, any bit condescending or argumentative, because that's not my intention. I think we just need to look at this whole thing for more than just one particular aspect that may have been overlooked, not incorporated. I know for a fact that in talking to people, and I've talked to many people, the draw to this area is the natural beauty, are the forests, are the lakes, are you name it. And I'm more than a little disheartened at the very city that has comprehensive plans and a lot of other things that speak to the Northwoods character and what that means, having embarked upon an expansion of this disc golf course in a way that to me is even incomprehensible, to think that the city that espouses to holding this Northwoods identity so near and dear would think of doing.
Actually, I'd like to add to that, Brad. The comprehensive plan actually has a goal for the Parks and Recs. And I found it was goal 1, and it was to create a park system suited to a small community with a large visitor population. And one of their gradually improved parks, strategic design, a trail network, but one of them was promote non-traditional recreational facilities and activities such as disc golf, fishing piers, pickleball, etc. So there was something in the comprehensive plan, and I reviewed it because I had a question too, like you, was there anything in the comprehensive plan? You know, I found that. And also the question for if you know, your suggestion to put it to a vote, is that just yay or nay on disc golf course expansion, period? Yes or no? Is that what your thought is? Just to make sure I clearly understand.
I would think so, because at the end of the day, the people that I've spoken to that don't see an additional disc golf course need in the community have really an issue with tax dollars going to pay for the upkeep, the management, everything we know that's going to be required to go into that. So at the end of the day, I think it is about how tax dollars are being spent. And is that a way that taxpayers and residents actually want to see their dollars spent? If the majority come back and say, yeah, fine, they've spoken.
One of the questions I had for you, Mr. Scott, have you ever walked or played maybe the first 18?
I sure have.
In that environment, does it feel up Northwoods? Does it feel like it's preserved nature? Or does it feel
not in my
urban?
sense or definition of it, but then I realize that I probably have a little different definition of when I think about up north and Northwoods character than probably most.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because I feel like it's a up north type environment. It's wooded, it's trees, there's animals running around. Besides being just natural, this was one of the things that I think would be one of the most up north activity that we could potentially do. Besides narrowing the fairways to make a walking path or whatnot. And so I just wanted to clarify that with you on the up north woods kind of feel. Sorry.
Finish. Please finish your.
I don't know, I sighed and I lost my train of thought. I think I'm done.
Okay. If I may, Madam Mayor. So again, trying to hear the council, each year one of you, writing my notes, trying to hope bring this to some kind of conclusion. I'm hearing send it back to parks. I'm hearing we need some parameters. And I will also hear, when I hear the council say, I think want to hear other alternatives, and Councilman Jensen say, well, if it comes back to this golf course, comes back to this golf course. Well, my recommendation to you would actually be, if you want to see other alternatives, send it to Parks and Rec and say other alternatives do not consider disc golf course. Because the fact is, they designed a disc golf course. And yes, did they do it without the public input like you have gotten here? Yes, they did. But I can tell you they worked hard on it. Talking to them, they took pride in this. This is something that they thought was a benefit. There are some new members on the Parks and Recreation Committee too now. But the Parks Committee that was tasked with this thought this was the best. And so the only reason I say that is because I've seen this before, it comes back and the committee goes, well, we gave you our best thoughts. And so that's why I just say, if you do intend to sending it back, my recommendation would be tell them to submit other ideas excluding disc golf course. It's not saying you're getting rid of the disc golf course. You're saying, we have the disc golf course. We have a layout of a disc golf course. We would like to see alternatives. And then ultimately, you as the council have to decide what you're going to do. And so at least then that gives you saying, okay, now we've got the disc golf course. That's done. We can either stick with that, or here's plans B, C, and D. Apart from what Councilmember Scott is asking for is a yay or nay right now, which it sounds like you're not willing to say tonight. I think that's kind of the best option is, you're going to have to say yay or nay at some point. And if you're wanting more information, I would say send it to the Parks Committee, absent of the disc golf course. Because again, what I don't want to put the Parks Committee is in that awkward position of, well, we gave you a disc golf course. It's again trying to clarify that information of, we want alternative solutions to this land.
I want to follow up with that. The only thing is, if they come back and say disc golf is the best, then we're right back at square one, which is we still have residents who need help solving some of these
Which
issues.
comes back, Madam Mayor, to the council needs to make a decision.
Just to clarify, when I made reference to
I'm
the
going to have you come up because you're new on
vote
there.
up or down, that was in reference to Councilman
Yes.
Maroney's question about if we put it out to the voters, what does that question look like? And my mind basically would be, do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to fund the expanded disc golf course, yes or no? kind of a thing.
That still doesn't get back to the process that failed. I mean, if that came back overwhelming, we
No,
still
but that
have
could
an
be the
issue.
process. That could be the process that would replace the current process that seemingly, you know, I think it's safe to say we're kind of struggling with where to go with things. And I want to just renew my request that I made earlier, because I've maybe not framed it in the form of a request, but I really would like to know if the council's going to, you know, vote to move this forward. I would like someone to at least help me understand what the public purpose here is. With this expanded disc golf course, how do taxpayer dollars going to support this get to a public purpose that benefits and serves the majority of residents in this city?
The downside about, and also calling for a vote is do you call for a vote for a new park? I mean, we just spent $140,000 for park equipment. There are people in here that do not have kids that will never use it. And they may say, no, I don't want to use that. Do we not continue to advance parks because people don't see the direct impact? It is up to us to consider what's good for the majority involved.
Right, including those that aren't here tonight.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Including the many that aren't here tonight,
constituents.
whether they're supportive of this or whether they're not. I mean, that is part of the overall kind of responsibility and somewhat burden that we have, right,
Yes.
as elected officials, is representing everyone in all views and all voices. Because as far as I understand, going back to when this was brought to the Parks and Rec Committee and they developed the plan, they made the recommendation, we are where we're at today as a result. I'm interested to know who was behind representation at those Park and Rec meetings from the standpoint of those that supported it. Was it largely the Disc Golf Course Association?
To that, Madam Mayor, if you want to know, I'll just be honest, if you want to know how the Park and Recreation Committee would, I would encourage you to hear from Diane.
Yes, I was going to say, can I please have Sandy and Diane come up and give your opinion on?
Diane was on the Parks Committee at that.
And then
that
Sandy, I
design.
do want to hear, because you are new to the committee, and I do want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. I've been on Parks Committee since it began. I was one of the first people actually even interested in recreation here. The disc golf was first mentioned, as far as I could find in records, back in 2010. It was seriously started to be talked about in 2011. In 2014, we had a designer come. And I don't know how good the minutes were kept for those meetings. And I can't say exactly when the idea of having it more than 9 holes or more than 18, or when these stages came in and were talked about. But it wasn't ever done like in secret. And I will tell you one thing, trying to get public input before there's a problem is near impossible. Everybody's willing to rush out when it's something happening that they weren't prepared for and maybe don't understand. So that's the easy part. So we have not done any of this to try to ruin somebody's view from their backyard or have, anything like that. We were working to bring recreational amenities to the community, and we continue to do that. And government's not always easy or clean. Sometimes it's tempers or upset people, but you get there, you listen to problems, you try to find solutions that kind of meet all the needs and make most people happy. Yeah, everybody's not going to be happy all the time, and trying to please everyone, you'll get nowhere. You will be sitting here till tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. When you have to get ready for work. It can't be done. So you try to be appreciative of people's needs and their feelings and figure out how to sweeten it the most you can for everybody concerned. But this has been a long process. And I think it's not ever been secret, but usually people don't show up for parks meetings. Sadly, we had 2 people at the last one, and we didn't know what they were there for because they never spoke. And then the meeting ended, and they had been coming to us to talk about this very issue. We didn't know that, sitting up there. We might have talked to them, made a difference, I don't know. But this is a long history, as all other park projects have been. Nothing just sprang up in one meeting. Believe me, you know how the wheels turn. Pretty slow, pretty slow. So people have hopefully opportunities to speak or follow along, read what's in the newspaper, and then respond. And if they don't, if we don't hear anything, you kind of assume that it's okay. So, I mean, that's kind of how we got here. It's been years in the works, and we are proud of it. And I did some checking too, and it's ranked number 3 in the state on one of the posts that I saw. And, you know, it's kind of unique because of the terrain. It's different than most. I've been to one other disc golf course, and it was in a ravine in the cities, and they're playing up and down hills, and they had a walking trail parallel to it, paved, which was nice. And so it was 2 uses together. But, I mean, I could offer that as a possibility, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and I just want to add that I think that where I stand on this, and then I'm going to Sandy come up, I don't, just like Councilwoman Ball, I don't think we should be dismantling. It is here. It was a lot of work. It was years of work. And again, there was unfortunate things that happened along the way. I think the best way to move forward is to have the residents that are directly affected work with either staff or to work on their specific property. I think that is the cleanest and easiest way to move forward, because if we go back, like she said, and we start soliciting, everyone's gonna have different ideas. The money's already been spent. It's done. And now we have an opportunity to still fix some of the wrongs, but the only real way we're going to move forward now is to learn from our past, so projects moving forward, that is where we fix them, not backtracking on something that took years to build. Because there are lots of residents to this community who support that expansion, and there are many people who now play disc golf because of that. So we're not going to please everybody, but I think the people that I really see have the biggest need right now are the people who live on the course, who feel that they need to have some closure, and I know that's something that you have said, and being able to, again, work with staff or Parks and Recs on solutions so that it can be brought back to say, these specific properties, we have decided here are the needs for these properties, here's our recommendation to council, and then council will vote on those. I think that is the easiest way to move forward.
If we did that, I am not opposed to removing holes to achieve that goal.
Correct, and I'm not either.
Okay.
So I think that should be what we motion tonight to move forward.
You were going to have Sandy.
Oh, yes,
She
sorry,
She
Sandy.
moved, Sandy.
Our new Parks and Recs, quickly, because I think we might have a motion here. Let you guys all go home.
Well, I guess what I have to say, you know, if you're going to make a motion on that, then we're there. I would like to remain open on the whole thing, not dismantle it. You know, look at the residents. What are the options? You know, if you're going to bring it to the Park and Rec, if you're going to do that, how can we make the residents happy if we went that way? Also look at options for multi-use. That's what the park board should get. And then also if there isn't a way to make residents happy and have a multi-use kind of thing, then what can we do with it? But to just kind of like go in one direction and not look at everyone else, I think the Park and Rec needs all the information. That's just what I would like to see.
Yes.
If it goes to Park and Rec.
I agree. We're working on it.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, what would the thought be behind if we if we directed city staff to,
Pause.
sorry, we pause all work.
Yep.
At the moment. We direct city staff to work with all abutting property owners that wish to come to the city to work out an arrangement.
Yep.
We inform Public Works at their next, are they meeting this month? Sorry. Park and Rec.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. We inform Park and Rec that it will be coming back to them for discussion to start the juices flowing of what else. And at our next council meeting, we won't see anything about disc golf course. After staff has worked with everyone, they bring it back to the Park and Rec in June to discuss the final plan. Am I not the right, no, May.
We're April.
I'm sorry, I'm confused about this whole process, because it's
You
go
like
to Park
this?
and Rec,
You
go
know,
to work to
I got
staff,
the
go
red
back to
light
Park and
tape
Rec.
going.
I'm a little confused at the flow here.
The reason, okay, here's where I was trying to get to.
Here's thought process.
Here's what's trying to go on up here. Abutting property owners work with staff to figure out the resolution.
Can you do that by May? Can you have us recommendations by May's council meeting, or do you want to do June?
I would actually say by May's Park and Rec. Bring
Why
it,
would we?
So-
It can come
Yeah,
directly to us
Why
from
isn't it
city
coming
staff.
directly to the council?
for Park and Rec to understand, here was the resolutions we came forward with. We asked you if you had any other potentials with Park and Rec for this property. Do you want to continue with the resolutions that we came up with the abutting property owners, or have another solution that you'd like to forward to council?
I think that it is very important for the city not to do the same thing twice, and it is of utmost importance for you to notify every
Yes.
single property owner.
Okay, oh, you know you can't shout out without coming to the podium, so let us just work through this, please. I think, do you feel like you have the resources without having to go?
It's not a
to-
resource thing, ma'am. It is a clear direction in what you want. I just want to be clear, like, you direct, we will do. And I'm just trying to clarify what it is you want.
So if they work with.
So what I'm hearing, let me just, what I'm hearing is you want to direct staff to work with property owners, and we would notify all the property owners to come work with us. So we would send out, we'd go, okay, here are the property owners, we would send something out to the property owners saying, this is the council's direction, here's our contact information, please set up a time to come in and meet with us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there will be a deadline. From Councilmember Maroney, what I'm hearing is you then, so we would, Mr. Olson would come in, we'd sit down and say, okay, here's your property, here's how impacted, how do you feel it's impacted, what do you think is an equitable solution to the impact on your property? We would discuss it. You then want us to, take that recommendation to Park and Rec to say, hey, we're gonna take this to council, you okay with this, or do you wanna send them some other recommendation instead? Because my concern is, and this is where, and that's where I'm just trying to figure that out, because I don't, if we're gonna work with the residents, I wanna be genuine that our work with them is genuine and not, hey, come with us, but Park and Rec might decide to do something else. That's what I'm getting at, is if that's direction, my recommendation then comes back to council, and you say yay or nay to the recommendations that we have worked together on.
I agree with that. And
Now,
then they can still go back to Parks and Recs.
And I do want to clarify, you can still, I don't necessarily agree with this assertion that the disc golf course and other uses cannot coexist. You can still send this back to Park Recreation and say, again, keep looking at this property as a whole and wonder what are all the things we can do with this property in conjunction with the disc golf course. Or you can just say we don't like, and that's again, where I think from the staff's perspective, again, we just need clear direction. But I think we keep coming back to is there kind of needs to be a decision on the disc golf course itself. Are we pursuing other alternatives? But not necessarily dismantling it right away? Or are we pursuing fixes to the disc golf course? Because I feel like if we pursue fixes, then we're generally pursuing fixes. And if the council agrees that those fixes are equitable, that's what we will do.
I like that.
I guess that's where, again, from a staff's perspective, I think that's kind of where we're at is, are we moving forward with this golf course? Or are we looking at other things?
See, I'm,
Again, you can still look at other things and move forward, but that's, I think, that's where I think what I'm hearing from people is we're still not quite sure.
Two separate things.
I still would like to see residents' voices heard at Park and Rec on other uses.
Yeah, we can.
But that,
In
has
conjunction
to-
or instead of?
if it's, I don't know how we word the motion, but it has, the residents that their voices weren't heard have the opportunity to provide input, because by just eliminating holes, I don't know as if that's the right approach. I would rather see alternative, uses, but it's a known public hearing, there's notices that go out that the residents can provide input to Parks and Recs to alternative uses for the disc golf course. Now, I don't know then how you can do it in concert with working with the residents whose property is on, butts up to the disc golf course to fix it.
I would suggest it's in conjunction with.
Yeah.
Like, I suggest we take a stance on
Yes.
move forward or not with the disc golf course today and proceed in that direction of working with the residents to solve their issues.
Yes.
And then also work with Parks and Rec, work with residents to look at other uses in addition to, in conjunction with, as
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion for that? Make a motion for that and then we'll.
So I'll make a motion to move forward with the disc golf expansion, but pause to let the residents that surround the disc golf course to come in and work with city staff on solutions to their specific property. City staff will then bring those recommendations on the specific properties back to city council for approval or denial for those solutions at a future city council meeting.
I would set a date. I would say either can do it in May and, well, I would say my preference is June. And here's why. We want to give adequate time to inform the residents. Because there are some here today. Not every property owner on that golf course is here today. We would like to get out the communication. We like to get it on our social media. We like to send information directly to the residents, inviting them to come in. That's going to take a little bit of time to get that all together. Also, within that motion, I would appreciate authorization of expenditure of that funds, because it's going to cost a little money. And then we got to have time for the residents to come in on their schedules to work with us, and then prepare that recommendation. So I guess my recommendation to you on the date would be June.
Perfect.
So the recommendations as city staff comes back with those recommendations from residents and solutions in June, giving staff time to communicate with all residents who are impacted. All of the properties are notified and given a deadline for which to come in and speak with city staff on their specific property. In addition, I would also like to direct Parks and Rec to look at other additional uses for the parkland in conjunction with the disc golf course.
Do I have
I don't know how you can have the motion go forward, though, and then also have in conjunction.
Madam Mayor, just a point of order.
Yeah.
Before we discuss the motion, there needs to be a second to the motion.
And I cannot second.
You can second the motion.
I second the motion.
Now you can have discussion on the motion.
Steve, you were saying something.
I don't see how you can do it that way. I'm not in favor at this point of saying move forward with the disc golf course expansion. If you're moving forward, how can you direct Parks and Rec to look at other uses when you've already determined that the course it's moving forward?
I think the motion was trying to find what can be side by side. with the disc golf course. That's what the motion was.
Yeah, I
But
don't see it that way.
I think your understanding or your desire was to not do that, push it back to Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
to push the reset button.
Yep. Just to pause and look at alternate uses.
Is there money in the budget for other conditional uses? Like a pickleball court's $50,000.
Okay.
Yep,
hold on.
that's where, nope.
Well, I mean.
Just give us a minute.
I'd actually yield more to Mr. Jensen's. It adds to the timetable, but it's adding to the timetable of the due process. And I know it's gonna, to go back to Parks and Rec to ask them for what should we do, and it may just be that, it will be.
And I'm fine with that, and I think the residents are, but the due process was not followed. And I won't bend from that. And I'm not against the disc golf course. I want to make that perfectly clear. What I'm for is the residents getting their voices heard. And I firmly believe the process, they were not heard.
And that, but
they
voices
have
heard
been
on.
On,
uses.
yeah, on alternate uses or, yeah, even the disc golf course.
So if residents come forward to Parks and Rec saying, we don't have alternate uses,
Then so be it. I mean, if the residents don't provide input against it or alternate uses and the Parks and Rec ultimately decides the expansion can go forward, I mean, you still have the issue, part of that is gonna have to be property owners.
Both though? We can do both.
Was followed. I agree that the residents weren't notified that the trees were gonna get cut down, so that process was not clear. And that's something that we agreed should be done in the future, but there were a lot of meetings, and this, like Diane said.
This isn't
was not a
final.
secret.
Yeah.
And the Parks and Rec Board at the time already approved this as a.
I understand.
Park, so you're going back to a different Parks and Rec committee now with new members to revisit an issue that was already approved by Parks and Rec. I'm not in favor of this.
Well, I think they still have to come, both would have to come back to us anyway for a vote. So we are just voting to take a step here to get information back, to then vote. So we're not saying that just because that they come back with the recommendations of what they've worked with residents, that is what is gonna happen, and it's no different, you know what I mean? So
Well, the
we're taking
resolution
it-
was to move forward with the disc golf course expansion. I disagree.
Well, we're pausing it.
Pause. Well, first it was move
No,
forward.
no, no, it's being paused. We are saying that we're pausing it. We're saying that we're working with residents on how to fix their specific problem, which then that would
Understand.
not necessarily be moving forward with the expansion. We're taking a step in a direction of at least bringing people together to work on solutions.
Just for the disc golf course, but we're still not addressing what do the residents want? I mean, we're only addressing the surrounding property owners.
so
I think we have a comprehensive plan too, which addresses what residents want, there are surveys and poster boards that were up at all these public hearings that noted residents wanted.
And I looked at the
an expansion.
comprehensive
So
plan.
I think we know what residents
The
want.
399 or 29 provided input. I did look at the comprehensive plan.
Response rate for a survey.
Yes, it
But
is.
again, I'm not in favor of, I mean, you say that
We have to make a
we're not
decision on
pausing it, or we are pausing it, but we're still not addressing what do the residents want? We're just going to property owners. We know there's an issue there, but it still we're still not addressing what does the community, the taxpayers, whether they're residents, seasonal or part-time, want. And I don't think there was adequate input. I don't think there was anything hidden. I don't think,
Here, come to the podium.
Public has input when you get a comprehensive plan, and that's the guiding principles for the city moving forward and what we're moving toward and what we aspire to be. 2010 comprehensive plan directed the Parks Committee, and in that language, there was disc golf. That's where the Parks Committee started moving forward, because it was indicated that that was a recreational amenity that there was interested in the city having. So if we started at ground zero, every time there was a new member on a committee or a board, we'd get nowhere. There has to be some continuity. And so Parks was moving forward with a park plan. We had a comprehensive park plan drawn up. That was mentioned in there. So it's not like someone just dreamed it and an alien came and brought it. It was, there was opportunity for the
comprehensive
public.
plan was 2010.
This is different public here now. That's the issue.
It was redone, but it sat on the shelf. The city hasn't done.
No, we were working forward.
For the parks.
Yes.
But the comprehensive plan,
We
I don't
did.
think.
They just redid it.
We
Yeah,
did,
you
Steve.
redid it, but it still sat on the shelf. It really hasn't guided, I don't think.
I would dispute that. I would dispute that.
Yeah.
The fishing pier was part of it. This park out here, we've got that. We've got a park down by the power station. We've been working on stuff, but Parks had a very limited budget. For most of the, I don't know, 10, 20, however, 20 years or whatever Parks has been around, the budget was like $10,000, maybe 17. We were pretty limited with what we could do. Most of it was aspirational thoughts and planning, and we had to make do with what land we owned already and what we had. So, you know, because there's new people and they weren't at the meetings for the 2010 comprehensive plan, yes, it may seem like it was a surprise to them, but it was part of the direction given to Parks to keep working towards. And some of the steps are itsy bitsy. And so a lot of our things are done in phases.
Understood.
So, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't something that, you know, one person came in and said, hey, do it. That's not how we got our direction. We took it from the comprehensive plan of 2010. Yes, there's been new ones since then, but unless someone came and said, nope, that's out, we don't want it, we kept inching forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like Mayor Littlehide to come up quick. I know he was part of this for a long time, so I just want to get his input.
Tom Littlehide, Fairway Drive, Breezy Point. A lot of this transpired during my watch, and initially, 2010 comprehensive plan had, as Diane said, it had specifics on we were going to be developing a park plan, and included in that park plan was disc golf on a future basis. And they actually had a separate document. It was called the Park Master Plan.
I have it.
Yes, you do. I do too. And that was actually incorporated into a rewrite of the 2010 comprehensive plan that was issued in 2015. And that was moving forward to the 2020 comprehensive plan. Part of the 2020 comprehensive plan, as Rebecca had said, was we had posters up and we had free night skating. We had a lot of people come through, and they actually gave input as to what we wanted to have, and they ranked things. Disc golf was very high on the list, okay? So consequently, as we built the 9-hole golf course, and it had phenomenal success, then we expanded it to 18, and that had even more success. And maybe we just kind of looked at ourselves in the mirror and said, we got a good thing going here, okay? We worked with the disc golf associations to come up with a better golf course. And that's where the expansion to 36 holes, in other words, we'd have like 2 18-hole golf courses, you know, with longer courses, because that's what they were asking for. So a lot of this stuff happened, and it was the type of thing that, yeah, we probably could have done better on communication with it, but because of the success of it, I mean, it was being used constantly, heavy use. And we looked at that success, and we looked at just the very number of people that would come into the community, and they would spend time here, they would be eating at our restaurants. We knew that this was a benefit to the whole community. So as a city council, we looked at it and said, yes, this is a good thing, and we moved forward. That's kind of the history of the whole thing. That's how we got to where we are. Could we have done better with telling the residents abutting it? We probably could have. But that's water over the dam. We can't go back on that. The first 18 holes, we never had a complaint. And, you know, you probably want to get the input from those people as well. How many problems do you see on the golf course in your backyard? And then when we expanded it, all of a sudden we have not in my backyard coming in. So that's the issue on the table, and I agree with Rebecca. You need to give Park and Rec direction as to what they want to do. We want to move forward, resolve the issues with the individual property owners. And because right now, the course is 90+% complete. The only thing to put up is the baskets, and they're already in the warehouse, right? Yep, so we own the baskets already. So we just need to stick those in the ground and put up some signage and pave the parking lot. Oh, to answer your question on the parking lot, we bought that at public auction with the purpose of it being public use property. That was done very nervous when Patrick Wusso was bidding on it, but so that's kind of the history of it. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you,
Yep,
Tom.
thank you.
So we're still in the discussion. We have a second.
Can we hear the motion again?
Again, Madam Mayor. So the motion that's on the floor is to move forward the expansion of the disc golf course and pause to allow residents to work with staff on solutions to their individual properties, and to bring back those solutions in June. Staff should notify all the property owners, as well as direct Parks and Recreation to look at other uses in conjunction with the disc golf course.
I'm going to go on the record again just because I feel like it's needed to. I'm not satisfied as a council member that anyone's been able to define public purpose with this expansion.
Madam Mayor, I'll ask
If
for-
you look at the definition of the Minnesota Supreme Court for public purpose, one of the things that disqualifies taxpayer dollars being spent is if there's any of that money going to support a private organization. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the disc golf is considered a private association. And if it's not, I would like to see documentation to the contrary.
It's a park.
How does it benefit us?
No, it's a park.
It's a park that's been largely supported by the association and is clearly heavily used by members of the association.
Pickleball associations do that.
No.
I'm not
No, public comment, please, no.
I'm not trying to create controversy. I'm simply stating something that came to me through our newly elected officials training. That if I'm going to sit up here and be a voting member of this city council, I need to be satisfied as to what is the defined public purpose. And I'm not hearing it.
Nothing's.
Madam Mayor, can you call a roll call vote, please?
I can answer that question.
I'd like a roll call vote.
You want me to call the roll, Madam Mayor?
Yep.
Go forward.
Ball.
Nope, we're calling a roll call.
So how is it that you can have him sit down when I wanted to hear what he had to say?
I apologize, you wanted to hear him say, I apologize on that.
I'm just asking a question.
I didn't hear you say that he could approach, I apologize on that. Madam Mayor, Mr. Scott wanted to have.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Have you called the roll or not? If you have called the roll, then the roll needs to be called. I'm just trying to clarify.
Just to get everybody's motion on record of where we're at.
So roll call vote is,
Yes, for the vote, for the motion.
you would like me to call the roll on the motion? Okay. Ball. Jensen.
Opposed.
Maroney.
Opposed.
Scott.
Opposed.
and Zierden.
Yay.
Madam Mayor, the vote is 2 in favor, 3 against. The motion does not pass.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, sorry. Did you still want to hear from the resident?
I wouldn't mind listening to what he has to say.
Madam Mayor, okay.
Quickly, please.
Councilman Scott, you keep asking about the purpose of this. So last time I checked, the city of Breezy Point is first and foremost a tourist-centric city, economy, everything. Everything about this city is tourism. An 18-hole disc golf course is one course. People go play it, they leave. When you get multiple courses, we call that a complex. When there's a complex, people go there as a destination. 2 weeks ago, me and 3 friends went to Kansas City for 3 days. We spent over $1,000. My money, fact, not opinion, not hearsay, came out of my pocket to pay for hotels, food, gas. We met numerous other people from Oklahoma, from Kansas, from Missouri, from Iowa, from other states. We wanted to leave the snow. That's why this happens. This serves our community because we're a tourist community. We want people to come here and spend money on our facilities. You want to ride bikes? Go to Crosby. You want to play pickleball? Go to Cross Lake. They got like 16 courts. We can be a disc golf community. People come here to fish. They come here to the resort. They come here to do this. I go to tournaments statewide. People are like, oh, you're in Breezy. How's that course? I hear there's an expansion. Can't wait to go play it. Me and X number of people are looking to go there. And I'm like, it's great. It's going to be awesome. There's places to stay. There's good food. Make sure you try the Turkey Club at Commander. That's why we do it. Because it brings revenue in our community. It creates jobs for our businesses. People stay at our resorts. They eat food at our restaurants. They see our park. They're out there with their families. That's why we want it. You have one course, they come and go. People come from Brainerd, they check it out, they leave. They don't necessarily stop at the gas station. You want me to drive 900 miles to spend $1,000 in your city? Add that course. Also, it was 4 degrees and raining and it sucked, but I would do it again.
Good for you.
And I would happily spend $2,000 to bring 4 more of these folks with me, but they were all busy. Add that course, and you'll have people here spending thousands of dollars in this community. We're a tourist community.
And I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that at all. I think you raised some really valid points. The point that I am getting at.
I didn't raise points. I answered your question with facts.
No, I'm sorry, sir, but you didn't answer my question.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to move forward. Councilman Maroney has a new motion.
I don't have one right now. Mr. Jensen, did you have a motion?
I don't know how to phrase it. I would like to see this go back to Parks and Rec to look at how alternative uses for it, and if, as we discussed earlier, if Parks and Rec still thinks the disc golf course is the best, and this is after the residents can attend these meetings, they're posted, then so be it, the council votes. I mean, we do have to vote, yeah, one way or another, we have to.
So Parks and Rec isn't there to hear about the complaints or issues of the disc golf course? It is strictly to find an alternate, if there is an alternate use of that parcel.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you believe that that could be done at the April Parks and Rec meeting?
Maybe.
I think they're gonna need some time, I think.
And need to what?
Well,
I'm just looking so I can.
I would say
formulate
the
that
May
motion.
meeting.
May meeting.
May meeting, that I'm okay with.
So we would publicize on the Facebook page, advertise it, that we are looking at this parcel, I'll have it outlined, that we're looking for any input on an alternate use for disc golf course.
Correct.
And that Parks and Rec would discuss that at May, because the public opinion would come back to staff at that point. And Parks and Rec could go, we have a basketball court, we have a pickleball court, or we can continue with what we've already presented to the council. And if they present the disc golf course, which would come back to us in June, we would then direct staff to start working with residents, or could we direct staff to start working with residents now? Which might be an overkill, because if disc golf is not the way, but at least it expedites the timetable and allows staff to start working with residents.
I'm okay with that, because it's going to Parks and Rec. there's looking at alternative uses. The residents,
So here's how I'm going to formulate, and I'm trying to communicate what you're trying to go through. Mr. Chansky?
So this is what I have.
Oh, okay.
A motion that I am sensing is to send this issue back to the Parks and Recreation Committee to review in May potential alternative uses of the property, and if the disc golf course is still the best use of the land. Is that what I'm hearing? Because again, I'm getting back to, there has to be again, we're looking at, is the question still exists. Is the disc golf course, should it stay? And what I'm hearing is, that's what you want the Parks and Recreation Committee to answer.
Yep.
Okay, and that's what, to me, that's what this emotion,
I got two motions.
okay.
If I'm understanding.
If you can
So let's-
consolidate into one, that'd be great.
Okay, the second part of that is to direct staff to start working with the abutting property owners on their concerns of the disc golf course for however compromise that may look like, with staff working with them.
That sounds like the same motion.
It is, but it's not.
So,
So what I'm looking for is staff to come back with a recommendation back to city council in June and say, Parks and Rec said to continue or to do this. Now, if they say to do something other, then yes, I unfortunately did waste everybody's time on conclusion. But if the Parks and Rec comes back saying in favor of the disc golf, you also then have a side-by-side with what the resolutions were with each individual property owners on our fix for the disc golf course.
Hold on.
That's coming back in the June council meeting.
So
We have
Clara, so
all-
essentially what you want us to do is run these simultaneously.
Yes.
So in the off chance, or in the chance that the Parks Committee decides continue with the disc golf course, it's ready to go.
Ready to go.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So instead of, so the idea is it's an alternative of let the Park Committee decide. If the Park Committee decides, then it's another month. You just want it, okay.
Yep. That's what I'm.
It is very similar.
It's very similar,
Okay.
but
I sense that, I do have the nuance of the difference between the two.
I just want to make sure that, I mean, this meeting at Parks and Recs will obviously be posted. There'll be residents for, residents against, whether the disc golf club, we're going to get the input.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
But the way it was worded before, it was like, you're moving forward, but then we're going to go to Park and Recs. It was the moving forward with a pause. Well, I don't know how you do that.
Again, just to clarify the two, the Parks and Rec is having a meeting of discussing alternate uses.
Yes.
Not regarding what we have already heard about why disc golf may be good or bad.
Yes.
It's come to the table with
With
alternate
solution,
uses.
yes.
Yep.
Yes,
Which will
I'm
be
good with
published,
that.
Facebook, to whatever, so.
Yes, come up really quick, please.
Wade Van Kempen, Bemidji, Minnesota. Sorry, I was not prepared to speak. I feel like I need to say, I feel like this has passed so many channels already. It's painful. It's painful for them. It's painful for us. It's painful for you guys. It sucks for everyone. We don't want to keep pushing this back month after month after month. We are totally willing. Shane has talked to many of these residents, and we're trying to work with them to edit anything we can. Silence holes, move baskets, shorten holes 100 feet. We can do it.
We would like then,
I just.
No.
we can't?
I feel like the options here, because this is stressful. It's for us that are pushing this, like trying to speak for this. It's stressful because I live an hour and a half away. I work 50 hours a week. I keep taking half days to get down here. I have nothing in this other than the love of the sport. If I don't get to do another tournament down here again, so be it. This is a beautiful property. It's for the better of the people. I could never play it again, and I'd be happy helping deal with it. I don't profit from this at all. We are a nonprofit club, registered with the state of Minnesota. You can look it up, Bemidji Disc Golf Club. I think that the options should be either everybody needs an answer. It needs to be shut it down, push it through, and we will work with anybody. I mean, we can, Mr. Zierden, Mr. Chansky, they can help communicate between us, and we can change holes, we can do what we need to do. I mean, worst case scenario, we can cut holes, we can make it a 27-hole complex instead of 36. I just feel like if we push it back 2 months to more meetings and more meetings and more meetings, and you try to find different, this almost $50,000 has been spent to get to this point.
Okay.
I just feel like, I just feel like stopping to find another use and spend more money on that is not for the better of anyone. Thank
I
you.
appreciate the comment.
Madam Mayor, if I can get back to the motion that we're discussing, and I want to kind of read what we have discussed. Obviously, and to clarify, this motion has not yet been made. So I'm just going to read it, and then if it's a motion that people are amenable to, then one of the members of the council should make this motion. But I just want to read kind of what we just discussed. Would be to send the issue of the disc golf course expansion back to the Parks and Recreation Committee in May to review alternative uses of the property and if a disc golf course is still the best use of the land, and have staff simultaneously work with adjacent property owners on possible solutions to be presented to the City Council in June pending the recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I just want to say I don't agree with sending it back. Parks and Rec to just rehash the City Council is going to have to make a decision. We should make a decision today. We've had many months to look at it, think about it. It's been going on for years. Make a decision.
The decision will be in June, is my take on it.
And I think the decision was going to be today. So I think that was what was discussed in March, that we were going to make a decision. So I get that you want more and more and more information, but we've been doing that for months. So,
I want more and more information for the residents that,
right, I understand that, but I think we've already gotten that, in my opinion, we've already gotten it. And we're not going to get anything new, and people are just going to be waiting.
And I tend to agree, but at the same time, I understand. I think this is going to be the best that we're going to be able to do tonight as a council. Otherwise, we would be here until, I don't even know how long. But I agree that I don't like that we're pushing it out 2 more months, but I think at the end of the day, this is what we came to.
No other discussion from me.
Councilman Scott?
I go back to the idea or approach about putting it out to the voters. If we're going to push it off 2 more months, what's a few more months beyond that?
It's not an election year, though.
Doesn't mean that we can't have a question on the ballot.
It's 13 years in the making.
We can sit and debate all kinds of things as to how long this has been in the works. And I think we all know that comprehensive plans drive a community's vision from those that actually turn out. It is wholly unrepresentative of this entire community. I'm sorry, it is. There's no way of getting around that.
So should
Having
we?
300 people show up to a comprehensive plan discussion when we're a community of over 2,000 people, it's not a very well represented percentage.
How does a comprehensive plan get done? Have you ever seen one that has a higher percentage?
I absolutely have.
You have?
I have.
Okay, awesome.
Well over half the community involved.
And I think the comprehensive plan, we're discussing of potentially redoing that if we redo the ordinance. We've had that discussion of briefly, right? But, okay. You can call the motion. Call the vote.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, staff reports.
Madam Mayor, I only have one item on the agenda for you tonight. It's actually related to your adjournment this evening, and that's just that the the annual meeting of the Board of Appeals and Equalization, which in Breezy Point is the City Council, will be held on April 19th at 10 a.m. here in the council chambers. To the public, I would like to say, Crow Wing County Land Services about 2 weeks ago sent out everyone's annual estimated valuation statement. If you have not seen it, I would encourage you again, check your mail, check your spam. If you have not received one, I encourage you to reach out to Crow Wing County Land Services regarding that valuation statement. The meeting on the 19th is when you'll have your opportunity to come forward, come to the council, representatives of Crow Wing County Land Services. The assessor's office will be here to answer questions or any challenges you have to your valuation. Again, just a little bit, we'll talk about it more on the 19th as well. Again, your valuation is one piece of the puzzle of property taxes. Valuation determines, you look at taxes, the levy, which the council sets, a preliminary in September and final in December, that's how big the pie is. That is how much taxes the city is going to receive each year. Valuation, that helps determine your slice of the pie. So again, April 19th, here in the City Council chambers at 10 a.m. And if you have any questions about that, please reach out to myself, or again, also the Crow Wing County Land Services, the assessor's office. They can also, if you have any questions about your actual assessment notice, they can direct you to the physical assessor for Breezy Point, and he can answer your questions as well.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
And then moving on, so I just want to say the reason I voted aye in the last moment to decide, because I felt like if I voted no, we would accomplish nothing tonight, and we would still be sitting here at the next council meeting and the next council meeting. I do feel like June potentially, I hope, will be a definitive answer on how we move forward so we can actually all move forward. But a no vote tonight would have just lingered on, and you guys would have left with nothing. And I didn't want you to be left with nothing. So that is why I voted that way. It's not an easy decision, and if anyone wants to run for council or mayor in the future to make these decisions, I encourage you to do so, because they're very tough, and I honestly make them with the best intentions. So please know that. So I'm really hoping that this leads to a resolution. Okay? All right, do I have a motion to it? Anyone else have any updates they want to give?
No.
Anybody?
Just so you know, on the 19th, I'm not available, so I won't be at the meeting. Okay.
Do I have a motion to adjourn
So move.
to,
Can you?
yep, to
I'd
Board of
appreciate if it was
Appeals.
just as it's written.
Yep, to Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting on Wednesday, April 19th at 10 a.m. in the City Council chambers. Motion,
So move.
second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight.